This channel is part of the History Hit network. Stick around to find out more.
No other woman in modern times has ever commanded so much attention as Diana, Princess of Wales. She's seen by her adoring public as a fairy tale princess, a caring wife, a devoted mother and fashion icon. But what happens after Cinderella gets the glass slipper, enters the glass carriage and wins her prince? At 19, Diana was cast alone into the royal family firm, and she's still fighting to overcome personal barriers of emotional and physical trauma. After more than a decade of royal duties, intense media attention, and speculation about the state of her marriage, Diana has emerged as a woman under pressure. To the outside world, her life appears idyllic. But from the pyramids of Egypt to the Taj Mahal, to personal family moments with her children, pictures of Diana leave the lasting impression of a much-loved royal heroine facing up to conflicting pressures alone. But what happens when the veil is lifted on the real Diana? Behind the public image of the caring princess with the heart of gold, is there a complex, sensitive personality desperately trying to keep up to other people's expectations? Is she really the heroine her supporters claim, or a victim of the royal system? A decade of royal walkabouts has made Diana, Princess of Wales, a significant public figure. She's now a polished performer, a modern-day symbol of beauty and glamour, the photogenic centrepiece of British royalty. She's seen as the open, accessible face of the royal family, a skillful communicator, a caring campaigner who shows a sincere understanding of other people's suffering. But from beneath the professional exterior, serious problems have emerged amidst dramatic press reports about her married life with Prince Charles.
In all that you do, you reflect so very sincerely.
During a visit to a hospice, her unease became very evident when the chairman praised her personal involvement with cancer sufferers. Such praise for her work with the sick and needy brought her close to tears. It was in sharp contrast to the confident, mature public image she's cultivated so successfully over the years. Set against the background of conventional British royalty, Diana's uncharacteristic behaviour reveals a deep conflict within the royal marriage. Already shaken by the recent departure of the Duchess of York, the British monarchy is now facing another marriage crisis with potentially far greater consequences.
History Hit is a streaming platform that is just for history fans, with fantastic documentaries covering fascinating figures and moments in history from all over the world. We've got unrivaled access to the world's leading historians, with hundreds of documentaries featuring everything from Boudica to the British royal family. We're committed to bringing history fans award-winning documentaries and podcasts that you cannot find anywhere else. Sign up now for a 14-day free trial, and Real Royalty fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use code REALROYALTY at checkout.
Separation in public duties is an inescapable part of being royal, but reports have revealed that this isolation is now part of their personal lives too. After 11 years of marriage, the cover's blown. On an official visit to Egypt, Diana enjoys the spotlight, while Charles prefers to be by himself on a trip to Turkey. They seem happiest apart. This separation has dramatic implications for the British monarchy. Just as the Duchess of York refused to toe the line, is Diana yet another example of an outsider having to fight the royal system?
The royal family, it seems, have not made any allowances for this at all in the past. If you don't shape up, you have to ship out. That's what happened to Edward VIII, that's what happened to the Duchess of York. Now, they can't go on existing like that. It's just not possible.
Diana sees William and Harry as her emotional anchor. They're her main reason for staying the royal course. She lavishes them with affection, cuddles and love. Charles is seldom seen in public with his children, but Diana is always there to support them at school events and take them on holidays. No matter what, their needs come first. Memories of her own disrupted childhood and parents' divorce have influenced her determination to provide a secure family base for her sons. Now, with her marriage under pressure, she needs her children even more, and William is there giving full support to his mother.
William's doing what we call sort of in modern terms parenting. I mean, it's sort of him and Diana, and he's sort of taken on the role of the wife, the boyfriend, the lover. I mean, there's this little boy who's very proud to be with his mother too. I think he really enjoys it. But I think they're a sort of unit, those two.
Despite her marital problems, she's very aware of how important it is to prepare William for his future role as king. He's already in training.
William is more reserved now. It's almost as if we've seen in the last few years the monarchy, the great burden of it falling on his little shoulders, because he's stopped being a sort of uninhibited child and become very much more serious.
The brothers are close, and people predict that Harry will be a valuable support to William in his future role. But her youngest son is definitely the family's charismatic joker.
That boy is going to be the next generation royal star. He is fearless when he sort of works a crowd, and he loves a joke, and she tells us that he's always been like that. She said right from the start he was the one with the great wit, loved a joke, great fun.
The bond between mother and sons is strong. Even under the intense scrutiny of cameras, their relationship is natural and relaxed. In June 1991, William was injured in an accident at school. Diana stayed by his hospital bed throughout. But after his initial visit, Charles left to attend an official function. His decision to put duty before his son provoked sharp criticism.
But I know he takes great trouble to make time for them in his busy life, at weekends especially. Now, you don't see that, the world doesn't see that, because he's not the kind of person that tries to exploit his children and make himself look good by allowing photographers to see all this. I mean, I think he appreciates that the children need to be spared this horrible spotlight that's trained on them all the time, as much as is possible.
But Diana was again seen as the more caring parent.
Mrs. Diana, how's your son?
Much better, thank you.
After her son was out of danger, she fulfilled a long-standing promise to open a new clinic for the deaf. Protecting the children in any marriage breakdown is difficult. Being royal complicates the situation even further. The pressure has been on to maintain a united public front, but Diana has now decided to stop the charade.
Sadly, or not, but the reality is this, that a number of uncomfortable truths were emerged, and one was that she just does not have any kind of relationship at all with her husband. If her friends had said to me, yes, they're very happy together, everything's fine, everything's wonderful, I would have written that. None of them did.
With the sudden departure of the Duchess of York from the royal family, the the world's attention again focuses on Diana. Her visit to Egypt in May 1992 without Charles excited more than usual press coverage. Like the true professional, she never faltered.
Ma'am, what do you think of the wall paintings?
I think the clarity of it is exceptional. Really quite extraordinary.
Sightseeing and public duties continued despite the massive attention. Under the intense media spotlight, Diana retains her composure.
That onslaught is terrible, but then to see every eye on you, every eye examining your jewellery, your makeup, your hairdo, looking up and down at the dress you're wearing, it's frightening. I mean, maybe models on catwalks know how to cope with that, but the average girl wouldn't. And she hadn't had anything that would prepare her for that.
After more than a decade of public exposure, she is used to the ever-present cameras. But her first encounters with the press before her engagement to Prince Charles in 1981 were far less controlled. A baptism of fire, it was a case of having to think quickly on her feet.
The two of you, can you say if you're likely to make an announcement soon?
Lady Diana. Lady Diana?
We thought there was going to be an announcement on his 32nd birthday, but there wasn't, and he told reporters yesterday that it may be coming soon. Have you any comment to make about that?
Lady Diana. Lady Diana.
No comment all round. Did you have a good weekend, though? It's work now, okay?
The media whirlwind quickly gathered pace. Her photograph guaranteed a boost in any magazine sales. She was a world phenomenon, fair game for any photographer who could get her in their sights. Di mania reached a peak during a tour of Japan in May 1986. No one had predicted such extreme adulation, hyped beyond even Hollywood. Surreal and obsessive, the pressures were extraordinary.
I think she enjoyed the attention. I think it terrified her to start with, and then it became like a drug to her. And I think the attention that's focused on her is the one thing that she really enjoys still, being the Princess of Wales.
Abroad, Charles and Diana are seen as Britain's foremost ambassadors. They've appeared as a smooth and professional double act. In this often stilted atmosphere of extreme formality, her more relaxed style shines through. She tackles international relations with her usual straightforward chat. Even the elderly Emperor Hirohito succumbed. Formal dinners are the orchestrated, predictable parts of foreign tours. At the other extreme, Diana has to cope with the unexpected, as on a building site full of Australian construction workers. But everyone gets the same treatment and attention, even a half-clad builder wearing his T-shirt on his head. Never at a loss for words, she shows an uncanny ability for just getting on with people from all walks of life.
To marry you today, my wife won't let me.
Diana's a patron and plays an active part in the charity Help the Aged. She's particularly open and relaxed with the elderly. In contrast to the royal family's more restrained, hands-off approach, she's tactile and spontaneous. She's a communicator who intuitively creates an immediate rapport. Diana's also particularly at ease with dancers, as ballet is a passion of hers. She grew too tall to pursue her own ambition to dance, but now channels her enthusiasm into supporting the professionals. For ballet, Diana takes over where Princess Margaret left off. Both have added an arts dimension to the royal family's more horse-loving and Philistine image. Her early desire to perform as a dancer has helped her become a leading player on the public stage. People also expect a performance from their royals. Like it or not, Diana has a stage and a waiting audience. The shy Di image was soon outdated. But things were far from easy to begin with. Once the press had scented a possible romance before her engagement was announced, her private life suddenly became public property. This is the real acid test for all royals-to-be, and the pressure on a 19-year-old was intense. The announcement of the engagement in 1981 meant an immediate move into Buckingham Palace. These protective walls suddenly isolated her. She was totally unprepared for the future.
Within the royal system, she was getting no support at all. In fact, she was given less training, and the same applies to the Duchess of York as well. Yes. Less training than the average supermarket checkout girl. She wasn't told a thing what to do. She was terrified, she was nervous, she was lonely, she was lost.
Their engagement didn't get off to a good start. Charles left for a 5-week official tour of Australia and New Zealand, leaving Diana to cope alone. In Australia, her husband-to-be improved his polo game and basked in the glory of finally capturing a beautiful young bride. On his return at another polo match, Diana was there to watch him play just a few days before the wedding. But the strain was beginning to tell. She burst into tears and had to be led away. Her first public show of anxiety. A natural shyness, childhood traumas, and the pressures of public life meant the young princess soon fell victim to a persistent eating disorder, bulimia nervosa.
She was being sick 4 or 5 times a day. And this started on the honeymoon. It just a chance remark by Prince Charles. He patted her tummy and said, you're looking a bit tubby here. And that somehow sparked something inside her.
This nervous sickness, a grueling schedule and heavy rain dominated her first taste of an official tour of Wales. The pressure was on. Huge crowds packed the streets to see their first Princess of Wales for almost a century. Diana emerged looking very thin. 3 days of walkabouts and functions were daunting for a novice princess. From the start, Charles expected her to follow his lead and take second place. She seemed a natural at the complex technique of the walkabout, showing an intuitive feel for working the crowd. It was an exhausting experience, but she was an instant success, and her triumph earned her high praise from her husband.
I could see him saying things that seemed to be praise, consolation, patting her on the hand when he sat beside her. And I remember one afternoon at the Braemar Games when I was there watching them, he spent the entire afternoon kissing her hand, romancing her, making eyes at her. That was in September 1982, and William must have been a few months old then. Now, he certainly looked like a man very much in love with his wife to me, and that was a public show of affection.
On their engagement day in February 1981, they were billed as the romance of the century. They'd come through a bizarre courtship, hurried and distorted by a prying press. Now she was finally able to say if all the attention had been a strain.
Yes, it has, but I think anyone in the position we've been in would feel pressure and everything. But it's been worthwhile, every bit of it.
After a long search, Charles, the serious-minded heir to the throne, finally chose the well-born girl, Lady Diana Spencer, who'd once lived next door on the Sandringham estate. As one observer noted, if she hadn't come along, she'd have to have been invented. As for Diana, she'd captured her prince and the man of her dreams. On July 29, 1981, they were married in a media event watched by 700 million people worldwide. For a monarchy with a rather staid traditional image, the arrival of a young and beautiful royal consort was a valuable boost. Born a commoner, she was a vital link with life outside the palace walls. The entire world stood still to see this young Cinderella marry her Prince Charming. It was the fairy tale everyone had been looking for. But had Diana really won her prince?
I don't think that Charles was in love with her when he married her, but I think he grew to love her in a very protective way, a sort of almost a Professor Higgins. I mean, out of this chrysalis came this, which she was, came this sort of gorgeous butterfly.
Charles seemed eager to show off his new wife. She was his dazzling future queen who added a new dimension of glamour to the royal cavalcade.
I remember on their first tour of Australia in 1983, I thought he looked so proud of her, and he used to touch her constantly, which I think is a good sign in any marriage. He used to pat her on the hand, and the whole look that he gave her said, "I'm so proud of you." I think that was a very happy time then. Perhaps it was an ordeal for her. It was almost 7 weeks on the road, you know, with very few breaks. It was a tough tour. But they seemed very together and a great team.
In New Zealand, Charles paid public tribute to his young wife.
Ladies and gentlemen, the last time I was here was 2 years ago, in 1981, shortly before we were married. And at that time, everybody was saying, "Good luck, and I hope everything goes well, and how lucky you are to be engaged to such a lovely lady." And my goodness, I was lucky enough to marry her. And we had many, many messages. It's amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
One of her greatest tests was Diana's first visit to the United States in 1985. The visit included being guests of honor at a glittering White House ball hosted by the Reagans. Hollywood stars turned out in force to inspect the princess. She'd once waited in the rain for the ballet dancer Baryshnikov's autograph. Now she found herself sitting next to him as the focus for a celebrity audience. As for Prince Charles, well, he was just the man who happened to accompany the Princess of Wales. John Travolta broke the ice for other partners. It was a triumph. As one headline summed it up, now the United States falls to Diana. And America wasn't slow to celebrate a royal visit in their own way.
For $5, you can pose with 2 life-size cutouts. And if that doesn't impress the folks back home in Tennessee, nothing will.
Back home in Britain, the real Diana became known as the caring princess. Now involved with over 35 different charities, she's drawn to people-related problems. Hers is always the human face with a good bedside manner.
But she will go in and she will talk about the problems. She won't just say, "Gosh, what pretty flowers," or "And where do you come from?" and, you know, "I'm sorry about your circumstances." She actually will sit down with them and have a proper conversation about the difficulties that they're going through, about how they're coping with it.
Her personal experience helps her to relate and identify with others. She conveys the emotional depth to make a difference to those she tries to comfort.
She clearly identifies at some level with people who are vulnerable, with people who have needs which they're ready to express. And she's very good at talking to them and talking about it.
She's also gone for the cutting edge of charity work, most notably drug-related and AIDS campaigns. Having finally mastered her nerves for public speaking, her speeches are surprisingly direct and hard-hitting.
Publicity about HIV seems to veer between sex and death horror stories, at one extreme to complacency at the other. It would be reassuring to believe that the virus only picked on those whose lifestyle we didn't approve of. People who, one could feel smugly, had only themselves to blame. Or that at least it would give us some kind of visible warning. But such comforting thoughts are not on the menu. The virus is now loose, and most of the time those it ensnares remain outwardly unaffected. HIV does not make people dangerous to know, so you can shake their hands and give them a hug. Heaven knows they need it.
Pictures like this do more than 1,000 reassuring words from doctors.
If you're dealing with something, as I say, which has been stigmatised and in which there's an awful lot of prejudice, bringing it into the mainstream and using something like the enormous authority which the Princess of Wales has to make this seem as though it's an issue which everybody should be looking at is terribly important.
Her visit to the Leprosy Mission Hospital in Calcutta in spring 1992 hit international headlines. The ancient untouchables were seen to be accepted. Diana seems totally at ease. By touching and caressing the diseased limbs, Diana is hailed as a saintly figure of hope against prejudice. On the same tour, she visits the first hospice for the dying founded by Mother Teresa. Over 100 critically ill people wait for her on camp beds, suffering from the final stages of TB and malnutrition, with little will to live. This is the hard edge of charity work. Diana's high profile as a serious campaigner, together with her obvious charms of glamour and style, means she now dominates the centre stage of royalty. Charles is no longer the main crowd puller. It's Diana they clamour to see. Suddenly, the heir to the throne is out of the limelight.
Although he put a good face on it for quite a while, he used to sort of say things like, when crowds were calling out for her, oh, well, I'm sorry, there's only me, so, you know, you better go and ask for your money back. Things like that, which weren't exactly as jokey as he tried to make them sound. It very quickly became clear that he didn't really like being the second string. He liked being the main star.
Charles cultivates the image of the macho, competitive action man, keeping up and sometimes outdoing the fast, vigorous pace originally set by the Duke of Edinburgh. He needs to prove himself in his father's eyes.
Lazaro coming through flat out.
Watching polo, Diana gets easily bored. By nature, she's competitive. At school sports days, she relishes the chance of getting out onto the field to race against the other mothers. But the couple's competitiveness spilled over into the public arena when Diana and Charles both made major speeches on the same day. Diana's on AIDS and Charles's about education.
That in Shakespeare's land, 1 child in 7 leaves primary school functionally illiterate.
It turned out to be an unintentional clash, but exposed the yawning gap of communication between them.
Punctuation and numeracy.
With growing confidence, Diana is flexing independent muscles, going her own way and enjoying the limelight. Charles is falling back into bachelor habits. It's becoming obvious they are moving further and further apart. The press first began to seriously speculate on the state of the marriage in 1987, when Charles stayed at Balmoral alone. Diana remained in London with the children, carrying out public duties, playing tennis and seeing friends. They were apart for almost 6 weeks.
And I think he expected a wife to fit into his cosy little life. He did not expect that she would become a far greater star than he was. I think as he was the sort of used to being the sun, with everybody orbiting around him, and he fully expected his wife would be a pretty little satellite, you know, skimming around on the fringes of his life, Well, that's not what wives want. And that's not what happened. Pretty soon, she became the big star, and he was, relegated to outer space.
She no longer conceals her boredom in his country world of horses and polo. He seeks company and support elsewhere. The fairy tale of the gorgeous butterfly and her charming prince is wearing thin.
I think for a time, they were happy. And then the butterfly sort of got away and got out of control. And then and Charles got bored. I just think she didn't stimulate him mentally enough. And he's always preferred the company of older women.
Charles has known Camilla Parker Bowles since his bachelor days.
Camilla's fun, she's undemanding, she's married, and she's there. And I think she's one of those really gutsy, sort of horsey ladies, really. I mean, I don't mean that rudely, because the people that know her said she's absolutely fabulous, but she's a lot of fun, and she's sort of spirited, and she doesn't mind what you say to her, and she loves dogs, and horses and the country life, and she jokes, and she's also extremely intelligent. And she's uncomplicated.
She is a link with a life when he was much freer, when he was a bachelor. And obviously a very good companion who enjoys fishing as he does, shooting and hunting, especially hunting, that he really is passionate about in the winter. And she and her husband both enjoy these things with him. And a few other people like that were around when he was the centre of the world.
The bachelor life suited Charles. Before Diana and marriage, sun, fun and girls were all there for the taking. It was a glamorous existence. But his fate was to fulfill a royal role and provide the next heir. After putting it off for as long as he could, he finally chose a mother for his children.
Looking through Prince Charles's statements and interviews on marriage and on love, he was looking for somebody to fulfill a role, not for a woman to share his life. He was looking for a partner, not a lover, and basically, in summary, he was looking for a marriage of convenience. Diana married for love, because I spoke to many of her friends and they insisted and emphasised the fact that she was besotted with him. And that's the word they use, absolutely, utterly besotted with him.
Marriage also offered her security. Earl Spencer, Diana's father, dominated her childhood. He took charge of his 4 children after divorce and a bitter court battle with her mother, Frances. Diana's bulimia nervosa can be traced back to her parents' separation. Press exposure of Diana's own marriage problems in spring 1992 coincided with her father's death, stirring up unhappy childhood memories and adding more pressures on the princess.
Because her mother wasn't there for her, she leant very much on her father. She's supposed to have said at the time to Nanny Clark, "I never, never want to get divorced, Nanny. Please don't let it happen to me."
At the age of 12, Diana followed her sisters to Westheath School in Kent. Here, the order and routine of boarding provided a greater sense of stability compared to home. As a young teenager, Diana was popular but lacked confidence. She kept a low profile. Shy with adults, it was only amongst friends of her own age that she became more of an extrovert. She enjoyed babysitting small children and, on leaving school, accepted an offer of working part-time in a London kindergarten. Despite her lack of formal training, Diana's abilities suited the job, and she felt comfortable in this unpressured world of small children.
I wanted to teach children, and they said, why not come along? So I first started off doing afternoons, and then I took over the mornings and did whole days. But I only worked 3 days a week at kindergarten, and the other 2 I looked after American baby boy.
Constitutional pressures to provide the heir and spare necessary to continue the royal line only reinforced her personal wish to have children of her own as soon as possible. She's concentrated on creating the secure family base she never had in her own childhood. She's introduced a new, more relaxed style of parenting into the royal tradition. There were no family Spanish holidays in the sun for the young Charles with his mother and father. He was mainly brought up by nannies, although his parents did supervise the more formal events, such as delivering him to his first boarding school in 1955. At 13, he went on to Gordonstoun in the Scottish Highlands. The Spartan philosophy was designed to instill discipline, and then, at 17, he was sent away to Australia, to Geelong Grammar School. Here, the physically demanding outdoor regime taught self-reliance and perseverance. It was an education to toughen him up for the life of duty ahead. At 20, he took up his inheritance to become Prince of Wales. He has a profound sense of duty and a strong belief in the continuity of monarchy. In his view, each generation, particularly his own children, should assume responsibilities from an early age.
He's tried to instill in them a sense of duty. I think Charles is a bit of an idealist, really, and so he tried to instill all these things in his children. Whether it's worked or not, it's too early to tell. But I think a sense of duty is what he tried to instill in them. Always be polite. Say thank you to the policemen when they open the gates. Tiny things that really matter hugely if you're in that position.
On to Cambridge and Charles's attainment of a degree in anthropology, archaeology and history. This marked the beginning of his image as the intellectual, deep-thinking prince. A love of music is important in his life. Diana is less well known for her taste in classical music, but she enjoyed piano lessons at school and years later was offered the chance of unofficially performing in public. Her impromptu performance at an Australian music school certainly found an appreciative audience. The media's disco Di image ignores a continuing interest in the performing arts. Naturally, her public role has expanded her artistic knowledge.
She's certainly matured intellectually a lot, a great deal. She enjoys opera. She's a very serious ballet-main. She knows an awful lot about that subject. I'd say she's an expert. She could write a book about ballet.
No one would have predicted this, judging by her academic record. She hated exams and left school with few qualifications. Her ties with Westheath School remained strong. In 1987, she returned to give a speech and open the new sports hall, an appropriate task for someone who excelled as an athlete. She was a natural swimmer and highly competitive, had spent many hours practicing to perfect a prize-winning ripple-free dive.
My years at Westheath were certainly very happy ones indeed. I made many friends who I often see, and in spite of what Miss Rudge and my other teachers may have thought at the time, I did actually learn something. Though you would never have known by my O-level results.
Diana and Charles are products of very different backgrounds.
I think when two people have nothing in common at all, apart from their children, it is a problem. They were sitting at the dining table at Highgrove, and Charles was talking to somebody about the Just So stories, and she said, "Just so? Just so what, Charles?" It illustrates the divide between them, doesn't it? I mean, she'd never heard of Rudyard Kipling and the Just So stories. And so she's a completely different generation.
Born in 1961, Diana's upbringing was influenced by the youth culture of the 70s and 80s. Metropolitan at heart, she is a people person. Charles was middle-aged before his time, brought up in the company of people far older than himself. Introspective, he prefers solitude and quiet painting on a Scottish beach. But Diana has found an emotional outlet in her public work as Princess of Wales.
Her children and her public are her life. That is where she gets the emotion that's missing in her marriage. She gets the adulation that she loves it. And she really enjoys doing the work she does for charities. I mean, she genuinely enjoys it.
Endless handshakes are part of the job. It can be a wrenching experience. But she disregards the stuffier aspects of royal protocol with spontaneous gestures of affection, and her warmth is invariably returned. Her sense of humour even overrides any vanity about hairstyles in the wind. Smiles and laughs are a disarming safety valve, both publicly and privately.
Molto felice di essere qui. Work that out.
Salute.
Humour and a self-deprecating wit also serve to protect against those who wait to trip her up. It's her way of keeping the unexpected and the hot and tiring in perspective. She manages to retain the ability to see the absurdities of the job. A tongue-in-cheek attitude to military dress also eases the straitjacket of protocol. Teasingly irreverent, it's a subtle way of bucking the system. Members of the royal family are expected to behave within a rigid structure of protocol. Diana is a victim of an immovable system of family tradition and royal precedent.
What we saw happen to the Duchess of York tells us a lot about what has been happening to the Princess of Wales. That when you marry into that family, you are expected to be exactly what they want, and you have very little say yourself. I mean, a very tiny example is you must spend every Christmas with the Queen and the rest of your royal relatives. It is inconceivable that you might wish to spend that time with your own family. They just draw you in and lock you into that world, and there's no going back.
Off-duty, royal life is dominated by the Windsors' love of horses. As a family, they compete in almost every type of equestrian sport. The Queen is a countrywoman at heart, never happier than when she's near her horses. But a nasty fall from a horse in childhood has left Diana very wary of them. There's little common ground between these two very different women. Diana attends numerous polo matches, but her role is to act as prize giver and add decoration for the inevitable photo call. The game itself holds very little attraction. For Charles, polo is an emotional safety valve, a vital antidote to the formalities of public life. When he broke his arm playing polo, he laughed it off as an unfortunate inconvenience. But when the injury proved to be more serious and a second operation was needed, Diana was seen by his side in the role of the supportive wife.
How are you, sir?
Charles chose to recuperate apart from his wife at Highgrove, their country home in Gloucestershire. This is Camilla Parker Bowles' territory. She lives just down the road.
When Prince Charles broke his right arm playing polo, he recovered at Highgrove. Who was there to help him? Camilla Parker Bowles. What Diana finds offensive, and that's always found offensive about Camilla Parker Bowles, is the fact that she seems to have been always in the background, and she's very hostile towards her.
Ask any woman. The one thing you don't expect your husband to do when you get married is to continue having a close friendship with the people he knew before, if they're female. It's an insult. It's a real insult to Diana that he maintained this friendship. And I mean friendship, which is all, I mean, I don't mean that he was having an affair with her. I mean this close confidant who is a woman. It's just like throwing a bucket of cold water over Diana, and I don't blame her for being so upset by it. It's just an insult to her. Charles has always had everything his own way, because that's the way royal children are brought up, they're pampered to, people bow and scrape to them. That's what he's used to. He's used to getting his own way. If he wants to maintain a close friendship with Camilla, I'm sure he couldn't see the harm in it. I'm not saying there was any harm in it, it was just an insult to his wife. I think he would have been quite happy just to let her carry on the way she was. I mean, they're leading their separate lives. I mean, he's seen his own parents lead separate lives and maintain a semblance of happiness. And I think probably it's what he wanted for himself. I don't think he's rejected her. I think she has finally rejected him.
Diana is no longer the impressionable young girl he married. A decade of public experience has given her her own ideas. As a contemporary woman with an independent outlook, she's no longer prepared to toe the line. She's now forcing the issue of change into the open.
I think that Diana wants to continue in her role as Princess of Wales. She wants to serve the Queen, she wants to serve the nation, doing her charity work, which has earned her a place internationally of esteem. But at the same time, she's no longer prepared to continue with the charade.
Alone in Egypt, there's nowhere for Diana to hide. The press will always find her. In Turkey, Charles's solitary painting trip is also disrupted by an intrusive media audience. How can any relationship survive under such relentless pressures? But the world waits to see the outcome of this Shakespearean drama of lost love and a monarchy in crisis. The story of Diana is one of transformation from a shy, unsophisticated teenager into a self-confident woman prepared to challenge the royal system. She's disproved the dumb blonde theory and exposed a strong will and determination to get what she wants for herself and her children.
I think she's been trying to expose the inner workings of the royal family so that something better can come out of that. I think she was desperate to find an avenue to let the world know what was going on, not just for her own benefit, but for the benefit of the entire royal family, for the benefit of her children. It seems to me that she feels that the royal family are locked into a time warp. And unless they break out of that, and unless they realise that the 21st century is here, it's on our doorsteps, and unless they adapt to this, they're going to be finished.
In this democratic age, royalty has had to widen the circle of marriage partners to include commoners. But Diana and Charles are yet another example of an experiment that has failed. What if royalty ultimately proves to be something you have to be born and bred to? Lady Diana Spencer seemed the perfect raw material for a royal consort. Now she's seen as the tragic queen-in-waiting, who may bring down the House of Windsor. Cast alone into a royal system at 19, she's come a long way. The glass slipper no longer fits. The fairy tale has ended. They were the love story that would run and run, the happy ever after romance to take the royal family into the 21st century. This beautiful princess was a breath of fresh air, a glamorous lifeline for the British monarchy's stuffy image. The mystique is shattered. 11 years on, they're leading separate lives.
On a day like thousands of others, Diana, Princess of Wales, came out of her palace to see and be seen. It was a ritual, a formula, an unchanging routine. And what made it so special was her sense of style and fashion, her warmth and kindness. This was her role, her work, the reason for her inimitable performance, and the cause of the overwhelming media attention that claimed her as its own. If ever she doubted the sense of it all, she found her answer in the happiness she gave the sick and afflicted. But a year after her divorce and the loss of the title Her Royal Highness, Diana was ready to leave all this behind. The catalyst was Dodi Al Fayed, 42-year-old playboy son of Harrods owner Mohammed Al Fayed. Diana, as a guest of the Al Fayed family aboard their luxurious yacht, the Jonicle, had fallen in love with Dodi.
And she said, Elsa, I adore him, not even naming him. I adore him. I can't tell you, for the first time in my life, someone has looked after me so wonderfully. I feel that he's interested in me. I can't tell you how good they are to me, to my morale. I mean, she was enthusiastic. I said, are you going to marry him? She said, I can't answer you, Elsa. I'm coming to see you either Thursday or Saturday. Saturday she was dead.
For 15 years, Diana lived in Kensington Palace. With mostly just her staff for company, she had tried to create a family home. She surrounded herself with mementos of her Spencer family ancestry, her fabled but flawed marriage, and above all, of her two precious sons, constant reminders of her broken dreams.
I think they were instrumental, especially at the time of the separation and the divorce. I think, as all children do, not wanting to alienate either side. And okay, in some respects they were slightly the go-betweens, and yet they always were very careful not to upset Diana by mentioning things they knew would upset her, and they always said, Daddy loves you. Charles was truly her Prince Charming. He was the one that she was always in reference to throughout her life, even towards the end. Even any other relationship would always be kind of compared to or contrasted with her relationship with Charles. He was her reference point.
Diana and Charles shared the custody of the boys, and in July 1997 she took them on holiday with Dodi's family aboard the Jonicle. Following her divorce, Diana's life centred around her sons.
But the children, don't forget, she took them on the boat, and they had a wonderful time. Not probably William. William was not so happy, but the little one was thrilled, all the games, all the thing. And it was probably to accustom them to the situation. And when I asked her, are you going to marry him? And what's your children's reaction? She said, Elsa, I rang up William. So it was the answer. And he said, Mommy, I want you to be happy.
Diana would have never married Dodi without the consentment of the two children, and Prince William more than that, because she always said that Prince William was her anchor, and she admired the boy enormously, and she loved the other one very much, Prince Harry, but she always said Prince Harry is like a Spencer. I don't have worries about him. But I think that the future king, Prince William, has the sense and sensibility of Diana.
As heir to the throne, William and his brother Harry carry with them the traditions of the Royal House of Windsor. Diana knew that any stepfather would have a very delicate role to fill.
She also recognised that her sons were very much part of the Windsor household. I'm sure she wouldn't have married somebody that they absolutely detested, but I think she would have done her best to sort of bridge any gaps. And she had already mentioned to me that she thought the Al Fayed family provided rather a nice context for William and Harry, that there was this sense of family and a sense of warmth, and that Mohammed Al Fayed was quite fatherly towards them.
In the early years of family life, Diana felt at home in the country. When her marriage broke up, she lost the country home Highgrove and the family life that had been her childhood ambition. Like their mother, William and Harry became products of a broken home. Diana compensated by taking a dominant role in her children's lives.
She was concerned about the role of monarchy, about the paparazzi and how that might disturb her boys. And she was also very concerned that they weren't going to grow up spoiled or sort of too much within that tradition. And she used to love taking them to see, you know, the homeless and wear the jeans and just, you know, go down to brass tacks. I mean, she was terribly concerned that they should see that side of life. And she drummed into them the most amazing good manners, which she herself had absolutely impeccable, which is just such an asset and something I think she found rather lacking within the royal family.
Following her unhappy experiences within the royal family, Diana shaped the boys in her own image and likeness. In the words of her brother, Earl Spencer, Diana wanted their souls to sing freely.
She would really want them to lean on each other and to remember as well together the times they had with their mother.
With her sons away at boarding school, Diana had to fill many long and lonely hours at Kensington Palace.
Her friend was the telephone, and she really did have the hotline to all and sundry.
Diana regularly invited friends to lunch, often greeting them herself in the forecourt. Security and protocol prevented people from just dropping in. Isolated by her position as a princess, people came by invitation only to dine at Kensington Palace.
The food there, as I said, was both beautiful, delicious and incredibly healthy. I can remember one summer there was sort of like an orange sorbet with beautiful nasturtium flowers all around the outside of these crystal plates. She always had stunning flowers on the table, of course. And the food, lots of soufflés, cheese soufflés, spinach soufflés, chocolate soufflés, sometimes very naughty ones. But mainly, it was sort of elegant food that she liked. I remember also once asking her if she could choose a single item, if she sort of was locked away or sort of cast aside on a desert island, what would she take with her? And she said, oh, my juicer, she said immediately. And I thought, what a strange thing to say. And then she went into the whole business of, you know, look at this, you know, we can have 20 cucumbers blended down into this thing and it's fantastic for your skin. And her skin was absolutely terrific. So it obviously worked, but that's the thing she swore by.
Diana's day began at dawn. She slept badly. After many restless nights, she relied on exercise to face the pressures ahead. Before most people had arrived at work, Diana had already driven the short distance from Kensington Palace to Buckingham Palace to swim 20 lengths in the private pool there. Then it was on to the gym for a strenuous workout, often with a personal trainer. In a quest for maximum fitness, she experimented with many exercise techniques.
Health was something which fascinated her all her life. She adored swimming. She was a real fish. And she said that really relaxed her. She was an absolute fiend for the gym, but she said that gave her energy. To begin with, also, she played a lot of tennis, which she said got rid of her anger when she was feeling very frustrated. So she recognised that exercise was terribly important for sort of releasing her feelings in a way.
Those feelings arose from the broken promises and the betrayal of her youth. At 19, as Lady Diana Spencer, she had no idea of the way ahead. Marriage to Prince Charles was the culmination of her teenage dreams. She was to be the Princess of Wales and future Queen of England.
Well, the day after the princess's engagement was announced, her mother, Mrs. Shankidd, brought her into our shop, and there was a great deal of excitement, and her mother wanted to help her choose her trousseau. So we showed her our new spring collection, which she was very excited about, and she asked us to also design for her some very specific things. And the first outfit she chose from us was in fact a navy blue sailor suit, which then appeared on the official first picture together with the Queen and Prince Charles. She had been previously photographed just with Prince Charles on his own, announcing the engagement, but this was the first official picture with the Queen. There was a tremendous change in the way the princess dressed over the years. Initially, when she first became known to the general public, she hadn't learnt what photographed well, how things reacted sitting in a car, standing, windy days. All those things have to be taken into consideration when you make clothes for a member of the royal family. She was quick to learn. She made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, but she grew up fast. Once she learnt the basic rules of royal dressing, she made them her own, and she learnt to use the styles that were current in fashion in absolutely the right way.
From the start, Diana's face became instantly recognizable. Her youthful good looks were seized upon by the professionals for magazines and souvenirs. The photographers and makeup artists recognized her potential as a great beauty.
Well, the first thing that struck me was the colour of her eyes. They were such a beautiful blue, so clear. But I thought I couldn't find a colour that would complement the eyes. So what I did was I used a contrasting colour. I did a brown, basically a brown eye makeup, which brought out the blue of the eyes. To really emphasise them, I was to use a coloured pencil, a blue pencil, to match the colour of her eyes along the bottom rim, above the bottom lashes, which just emphasized the whites and brought out the blue of her eyes. I use navy blue mascara because I find it's very flattering on people with blue eyes, and it doesn't look as hard as black, especially in a photograph. I wanted to get this blue across, you see, so I sort of had this haze of blue, which I achieved with the navy blue mascara. And then using a darker blusher under the cheekbones to push them in, sort of following the shape. Basically, if you smile, you lift up the cheek pads and you leave that colour, leave that area alone, and you apply the blusher underneath, and that sinks in that area there. We had a hairdresser on the shoot, but he didn't have to do very much to it, apart from just run his fingers through the fringe to lift it off the eyes, so I could get to the eyes to make them up.
Blue became her favourite colour in clothes and jewels. Garrard, the Crown Jewellers, was asked to create Diana's engagement ring. They prepared a selection of magnificent gems for the young bride to choose from. In Garrard's workshops, skilled craftsmen used their expertise to make the most famous engagement ring in the world.
I think it was a very romantic gesture for Charles and Diana to choose that huge sapphire and diamond cluster, which of course suited her fantastically well because of her wonderful blue eyes, and the size, I think, was just right. It was also a very traditional ring. I mean, the sapphire and diamond cluster is the most popular combination, or it was the most popular combination at the time in the 80s. And it helped her make her mark as a princess, as a very bejewelled and beautiful princess.
For her going-away outfit, Diana's choice was a deliberate contrast to her extravagant fairy tale wedding gown.
One of the things she particularly wanted to have was an outfit that actually had a straight skirt. She felt that was very grown-up, very sophisticated. She was very specific about the colour. She loved a corally shade, and she asked us to design an outfit that had a little jacket. So in fact it was a dress and a jacket. And she was worried about what kind of a day the wedding would be. So we designed, in fact, two jackets, one with a short sleeve and one with a long sleeve. And as it happened, the day of the wedding was a gloriously sunny day, and she wore the short sleeve jacket.
A few months later, Diana was expecting her first child, and her adoring public were overwhelmed. Her fashion designers set to work on the creation of a stylish maternity wardrobe. This was the coat she wore on the day her pregnancy was announced.
The fabric for that particular coat was a multicoloured tweed in a lot of very bright colours, which she loved the texture of. And when we showed her a pattern of the particular fabric, she said, "Oh, that's great, that'll make a wonderful coat, and I'd love it to have some kind of fringing around the collar."
In spite of her pregnancy, many of Diana's days were still devoted to tedious public duties, but she was still expected to look like a princess, wearing appropriate outfits.
When it was officially announced that the Princess of Wales was pregnant, she came in to see us, and we designed for her a group of coats, day dresses and long evening dresses that were very specific. And the turquoise coat was specially designed for the Princess of Wales to wear at Windsor during Christmas. And it was in turquoise velour, and it had multicoloured little flowers embroidered around the yoke of it. It was rather romantic and slightly peasant in mood.
4 royal generations celebrated the christening of Prince William, born in June 1982.
The Princess of Wales asked us to design an outfit for the christening of Prince William. And the christening was held at Buckingham Palace. And we, in fact, designed for her a pink print silk dress and little tie bolero jacket, which she then later wore in Australia.
Diana's first major tour in 1983 lasted 6 weeks. She said she was a different person by the end of it. She began to feel more liberated from the stuffiness of British royal court. 2 years later, on her second Australian tour, Diana experimented with royal heirlooms. Queen Mary's emeralds were a wedding gift from the Queen, and Diana added her own sense of style with an exotic twist.
Again, Diana was very inventive, very original in the way she used these beautiful emeralds, historic stones, and she had great courage. She wasn't in awe of them, and she took the Cambridge emeralds and turned them into, again, a choker, quite a fairly narrow choker, which she also wore again as a bandeau, very 20s style. It was a very young and exciting look, and she wore the bandeau round her head during the tour of Australia when she took to the floor, swept off by Prince Charles. And again, it's a very memorable image of the young Princess of Wales.
In America in 1986, Diana wore her most fabulous jewels to dine and dance at the White House with President and Mrs. Reagan. She had cleverly adapted her beautiful sapphire brooch, a wedding present from the Queen Mother, into a stunningly elegant necklace.
The huge, again, the dramatic sapphire and diamond cluster, which was a present to her from Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, is the most spectacular piece of jewellery. And at the beginning, she wore that huge sapphire and diamond cluster in a rather conventional way, rather traditional way. And then, as her style developed, she began to impose her own personality, her own style, to wear her jewellery in very new and fresh and original ways. And it became one of her signature pieces, particularly towards the end of her life, when she began to wear those spectacularly sexy evening gowns with just one huge piece of jewellery.
Among the gems amassed by Diana, the £2 million wedding gift from the Saudi royal family was the most staggering in quantity, beauty and value.
One of the most important of her wedding gifts came from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and it was a whole suite of jewels. But her favourite piece from this suite was a necklace of diamonds on which was hung a huge Burmese sapphire, surrounded in a much more modern style with baguette diamonds in a setting that we call a ballerina setting.
The Saudi suite was adapted to suit Diana's taste. She made a choker from some of the gems.
The most dramatic change she made to that set was to create for herself a choker with the sapphires on a band of velvet, which she wore not only as a choker but also as a bandeau around her head, around her forehead, very 20s style. And this was something that she did. It was great fun. She did it on several occasions. And again, very much made her mark through her jewels as the new and dazzling Princess of Wales.
During an official visit to Germany in November 1986, Diana wore a fabulous set of jewels, a gift from the Sultan of Oman, comprising a modern diamond necklace and matching earrings. It was known as the Crescent Set. Worth around £1 million, it became one of Diana's favourites, and she wore it with both historic and contemporary jewels.
Diana was very clever in mixing old and new. As I said, this was a very contemporary design, and she wore it very well with the Spencer family tiara or with the Love Knot tiara. And so she created a very special, very royal, very regal look for herself by combining the old and the new in this way.
Diana's most important royal heirloom was the Queen Mary's Lover's Knot tiara, given to her as a wedding present by the Queen. It emphasised Diana's regal position.
She used her own personality to make the tiara part of her image. And the Lover's Knot tiara, which was a wedding present to her from Her Majesty the Queen, I think has created some of the most dramatic images of Diana that we will all remember and cherish. It is too much a part of Diana's legend. I don't think anyone could wear that again, so it's difficult to imagine what will happen to them.
She loved to surprise, so she loved that element of wearing something that took all the press and the media by surprise. And she loved clothes that looked sexy on her. I think she was able to wear very stylish things when the occasion was right. And I think that young people probably, in each different age of the princess, related very much to the certain things that she did. She loved to wear things like patterned stockings and saucy sweaters that had funny motifs on. And of course, the royals do have two very specific wardrobes. They are functional clothes that are seen by the public, and then they have a private wardrobe. And in her so-called private life, which wasn't very private as far as the media was concerned, she enjoyed wearing very casual, fun fashion clothes that made up the wardrobe of any young girl of her generation.
In her off-duty moments, Diana enjoyed the early days of motherhood. Unlike previous royal heirs, her boys were not educated at home with private tutors. School runs became part of everyday life. By now, Diana had matured. She'd grown decisive about her clothes and her image.
She liked to put the dress on, look at herself in it, and that was it. She never fiddled, she never changed things. She left it entirely up to you. She was very professional in the fact that she would listen to what you said and go along with it. She could wear almost any colour, and the spectrum was enormous. She looked very good in pastel colours, and she could wear strong colours extremely well. For Sandringham at Christmas, the princess wore a coat dress in purple tweed with a white and purple striped collar. The princess loved blue, but she loved red, and in fact she loved colour. And she had a very wide spectrum of colours that suited her, which not a lot of women do have, because she had fair hair, but skin that really reflected most colours. She looked wonderful in colour.
Diana was very interested in colours, and she went through a long period where she felt only comfortable wearing black. And she would say to me, I just can't really wear any other colour at the moment. It's just an introverted colour. She'd kind of gone into herself, she'd withdrawn from public life, and I think she felt very sort of contained in black. And then we saw her later on towards the end of her life just blossoming in these incredibly vibrant colours. The last time I saw her, which was on July the 30th, I had lunch with her, and she was wearing the most stunning Versace tulip-necked dress in sort of shocking pink, and she just looked fantastic. So she was very colourful towards the end of her life.
Diana displayed her most adventurous styles and daring clothes during her regular visits to America. In the early days, it was her hairstyles that really caught the attention of the fashion editors.
Generally, women grow into their hair I mean, I think during the sort of 18, 19, 20 age group, you're finding out what your hair does and doesn't do. And most of us were allowed the 20s to experiment, but the princess was not allowed that because obviously the media attention was so huge. So I suppose she very sensibly got herself organised with hairdressers who could deal with the way she wanted it. But that is what happened to her hair, as far as I can see, is it's all to do with relation to the neck. And as she became more aware that she could expose her neck, so the hair started to come up and get shorter and shorter and shorter. And as her confidence grew, she was able to deal with much shorter hair. And the princess very soon came around to thinking, well, you know, maybe I've got this nice thing here in the jawline and the chokers and the bit, and if I goes up, up, up.
Diana quickly learned that carefully chosen accessories added a crucial finishing touch that could make or break an outfit. In the 1980s, Diana had more than 75 hats in her wardrobe.
I think in the early stages, she wore them in the way English women wear hats to weddings, plonked on the head with the veil pulled over, or the fluff, the feather. And she, in very, very, very fast, we found her wearing them where they should be worn, which is across here. I mean, despite the fact that the photographers probably couldn't get into the eyes or couldn't see anything, but she really, almost immediately, maybe 2 years into being the Princess of Wales and having to wear a lot of hats, she suddenly realised she had to wear them the way they should be worn. Because she has great shoulders and terrific posture, she looks marvellous with those, you know, very broad hats. And once you wear those hats, you actually begin to like wearing them.
With her natural elegance and grace, Diana grew to enjoy wearing wide-brimmed hats, complementing her formal outfits. Generations of royal ladies have loved pearls. They bring light to the face and a touch of glamour to any outfit. Diana added costume jewellery as well as real pearls to her collection.
I think it's hard to talk about Diana's jewels or any Princess of Wales jewels without talking about pearls. She wasn't frightened by the heritage of pearls in royal jewels. She wasn't frightened by protocol to experiment with wearing pearls in different ways. But they're so bound up with the legend of royalty, and particularly with the Princess of Wales, that again they became part of her. They became her trademark in the 1980s. And there's one memorable occasion when, again, Diana, using her famous wit and her great sense of humour, which we know about, she wore a long rope of beautiful, sumptuous pearls, just knotted very casually down the back of a dress with a V.
Diana looked to an earlier Princess of Wales for inspiration, Princess Alexandra, wife of King Edward VII.
She was paying a very pretty compliment to the former Princess of Wales, to Princess Alexandra, who had actually been a fashion leader in much the same way as Diana was to become. Alexandra had made the choker very much her own, and I think it was very witty and very charming of Diana to choose the Edwardian choker, or Queen Alexandra's choker, and again it was a phenomenal success. I mean, it launched 1 million chokers, and everyone started wearing Edwardian chokers. And that was really the start of her huge fashion and jewellery influence.
A regular part of Diana's day involved shopping in Chelsea, the fashionable district of London. One of her favourite stores, Butler & Wilson, sells costume jewellery. Diana mingled easily with other shoppers who were unaware that a princess was shopping next to them.
She was also relaxed and funny, and would all burst out laughing when they realised who it was, and she just was so great about it and would tell them what she thought about it. She was always very easy with the staff, always had a great sense of humour, and enjoyed shopping. So we've seen a lot of very famous people, and they're always a foot smaller, or they're not as beautiful as what you imagine. With her, she was the reverse. She was a foot taller than what you imagined. She actually glowed, so she had wonderful piercing blue eyes, and she was extraordinary. So whenever she was wearing anything, it always enhanced it.
On one occasion, Diana bought a fashionable jewelled snake to wear at a pop concert.
She went for very classic things, but then she would try something like the snake. She would wear things that were quite adventurous, but she always bought very classic things too that you would see her wearing all the time. She bought a little pair of earrings that were French glass earrings, black French glass earrings. She wore them all the time. They were £5. So it wasn't intrinsic things, it was because it went, she wore things because it actually fitted with what she was wearing. Another famous pair of earrings that she wore all the time were silver gold earrings, just a plain gold. So she accessorized herself. It was so she would try things from the very simple to the very exciting things. A big star necklace or a wonderful star pinned on the back of her hair.
Costume jewellery was easy to wear, but formal occasions often demanded a tiara, which presented its own problems.
It's a long time to put on a tiara. You need a lot of help with it. It's heavy. You have to have your hair done. Diana complained that it gave her a headache and a neck ache. And I think at times when she had to prepare for her evenings out very early in the day, she said that she had to wear it all through nursery tea with her boys, which must have been a little bit uncomfortable.
The demands of the job meant that Diana's day wear was constantly updated, but she kept hold of some particular favourites.
Princess of Wales asked us to design a printed silk dress. She said, I want one that children will relate to. They love bright colours. And I want to be able to wear this as a working dress to visit hospitals, and generally just an easy dress that I can put on that is very much a function dress. And she seemed to like this particular dress because she wore it on many, many occasions over quite a few years. And the press, of course, picked this up and did make a lot of comments about it.
Over the years, Diana evolved beyond the decorative princess of her youth into a mature woman concerned with more serious, caring issues. She devoted much of her time to the problems of sick and handicapped children, who always responded to her tender touch. No other member of the royal family had Diana's special empathy with children. Friends recall her ability to relate to children and her caring side.
I think she had a touch for that. She had a touch for children from day one. She had a knack of how to treat children. I think that she always had a tendency for love, as I said, and people in need. Obviously, the disaster, if we can call, of her marriage helped her to accentuate the work in charity, because the emptiness she finds at home, the fulfillment she finds towards the people.
In August 1982, Diana attended the wedding of her good friend and former flatmate, Carolyn Pride, to William Bartholomew. She kept strong links with old friends who knew her as Lady Diana Spencer in the days before her extraordinary and troubled life as the Princess of Wales. These friends knew a side of Diana that the public did not see.
She felt she wanted to go and visit some of the down and outs under the arches at Charing Cross, and it wasn't picked up by the press because it was the sort of thing that she didn't want publicity for. She didn't think that they would want her there if they knew she was coming, and she felt very much she wanted to put herself over in her own right, and that's why she went. And as far as I know, the press never picked it up.
How will Diana's friends and former flatmates remember her?
I remember her, firstly, as a friend. And then I'll remember her as a princess, as we all will. I will also remember her as a very loyal, mature, steadfast, strong person.
She had the most incredible level of compassion, and she was not afraid of illness or sickness or death. And the other thing was about Diana was that she felt, particularly with the terminally ill, that it was very honest and that there was nothing left to lose, and so people lost their shyness, so she could really talk to them. And she was quite remarkable, and it was her intuition that guided her on every front. I mean, one might say the only time she actually lost her intuition was getting in that car on that fateful night with Dodie.
One of Diana's closest friends was Rosa Monckton. In December 1993, Rosa asked Diana to turn on the Christmas lights in London's Bond Street, where she runs the famous jewellery shop Tiffany. She recalls the extent of Diana's loyal friendship, where she supplied endless comfort and support.
As a friend, she was a complete stalwart. She stood by me through some very difficult times. And it's a compassion, not just for her friends, but for other people. And it was a compassion that, not a compassion that politicians have, that is switched on and off. It was a genuine compassion that welled up from her heart.
Diana was godmother to Rosa's daughter, Domenica, born with Down syndrome. Rosa remembers Diana's kindness.
She was absolutely extraordinary. She was, again, just stood by me, supported me, let me rant and rave, let me go through all the things I needed to do about not being able to cope. And she said, listen, I'm going to be there for her, for you, forever. And of course she's not.
Diana enjoyed regular holidays abroad with her girlfriends, travelling to exotic locations around the world for some rest and relaxation. She had an extensive circle of friends, but her friendships weren't without their ups and downs.
She had a lot of friends, I mean, and can you imagine the amount of people wanting to be her friends? So she was spoilt for choice. She could spot a fake a mile off, or somebody who just wanted to know her because of who she was. That's something she was also careful to teach her boys about. And she had her school friends, her friends that she shared the flat with before she married into the royal family. She also, as her life developed, as her charity work developed too, she began to include people from all sorts of walks of life. And she had a tremendous gift for friendship as well. She could strike this rapport with somebody and then she would follow it through. You know, she would make sure that she called the person. She had a lot of energy. She was dynamic in terms of friendship. She wouldn't wait for someone to get in touch with her. She would make all the running and she would make all the overtures. She was a very good friend in that respect. But she did also fall out with people, a lot of people. And when she felt that she'd outgrown them, that was that.
When you used to say to Diana, Diana, I'm sorry, I've seen this and this and this. It happened this to me very recently. And I think you're making a mistake towards having a friendship with this person. And if she didn't like it, she would not call you for 2 or 3 weeks. And then something will, you have a call from her, one invitation, or why she would, through a third person, say, why Roberto has not come to this dinner party or this do, and the person would say, because he's offended with you. And then she would come back to you. She was not, people say because she was not stable. It's not that. It's because she wanted to know as many interesting people as she could. That's the reason she became the queen of popularity. And also, she would become annoyed when she knew you were right, but she didn't want to listen to you. She was a very stubborn lady.
Diana's stubbornness led her to ignore the warning signs of her own obsession with bodily perfection. She identified with ballet dancers and actively supported the London City Ballet. Diana suffered from the eating disorder bulimia nervosa, but kept her condition a secret.
Well, when she went to see Susie Orbach, the psychotherapist who specialises in eating disorders, she really began to get to grips with the psychological mechanism behind the bulimia. And I think that's when she really got the insights into her early family life, her childhood, about her mother leaving, about how that created a hunger inside her, how that sort of became translated into a food addiction almost. And also her desire for control. Eating disorders are very much about control, and Diana was very self-disciplined and wanted to be in control of what was happening. So her body was the first thing that she wanted to be in charge of.
One of Diana's on-off relationships was with her sister-in-law, Sarah, Duchess of York. Despite being close friends since their youth, their relationship turned sour.
In fact, they weren't even on speaking terms in the final few months of Diana's life. And I think it was really all symptomatic of this bulimia. It's all part of it, you know, wanting to have this friendship, devouring the person, and then that's it, you know, throw it all up, we don't want that anymore.
Diana had speech coaching which increased her confidence. At one stage, she even joked about press reports of her eating disorders.
Have your patron here today. I'm supposed to have my head down the loo for most of the day. I'm supposed to be dragged off in a minute with men in white coats. So if it's all right with you, I thought I might postpone my nervous breakdown to a more appropriate moment.
To conquer her bulimia and depression, Diana treated her body with a variety of unconventional and alternative therapies.
Well, Diana had an incredibly curious mind about all sorts of alternative remedies. There was virtually nothing that she wouldn't try. I think actually some of the therapists were sort of horrified because they would think that only their regime should be taken in isolation, and a lot of these therapies actually contradicted each other, so it created a bit of a chaos actually in Diana's body, to tell you the truth. She had fads as well, but certainly things like acupuncture were terribly important to her throughout her life, and this also has a spiritual dimension. She even took her boys to see her acupuncturist, and she used acupuncture for insomnia.
Free from the constraints of royal family life, Diana relied on an inner circle of trustworthy friends to organise her social activities. During a private visit to Rome in 1996, the Italian press swooped on their guest. Following her elder sister Sarah, Diana ran the gauntlet, closely shadowed by her friend Roberto Deverick. Frenzied scenes abroad were sometimes part of these visits. Somehow Diana kept her dignity and remained unruffled. This trip to Rome was organised by Roberto Deverick. He recalls that memorable night.
Last year in July, funny enough, almost a year before she died, and we went on a trip to a big gala at the Palacio Farnese at the French Embassy in Rome, and it was a very extraordinary lavish party. She was overwhelmed with the lavishness of the whole thing, and in the way out, she said, let's go and say hello. And I said, Diana, these are the people who cook for you. And she said, well, tell them that was a delicious dinner. Pity they didn't give me more pasta. And she gave the hands to each of them and held the hands and said, I love Italian food. Now, she didn't need to do that. There were no cameras there. There were no paparazzis. She did it from the heart. She made everybody wait 5 minutes. But can you imagine for those two women, she made their life. And that was the touch.
Diana was always welcome in America, where her hosts valued her presence to help raise funds for their pet charities. She appreciated recognition for her achievements and her charity work, and in 1995 she was presented with the Humanitarian of the Year award by statesman Henry Kissinger.
She was tremendously fond of people like Kissinger, adored sitting next to him at dinner. They got on like a house on fire. You see, this is the thing that Diana appreciated. Somebody who could not be so withdrawn with her or shy of her, but somebody who could sort of just connect with her.
In the final year of her life, Diana grew more serious. The battle against landmines brought a new direction for her.
Within the treatment, do you cope with the psychological side of it as well?
Her trip to Angola in January 1997 publicised the suffering of landmine victims all around the world. Despite criticism from politicians at home, Diana continued her efforts and ignored suggestions that she had become a loose cannon.
Firing.
She wanted to show the world the reality of landmines.
I think she was trying to make a big contrast from the days of the royal state tours when she would be dressed up with the hats and the outfits and the ladies in waiting. And I think she just revelled in the fact that we're coming into the into the 90s, and this feeling of dressing down, of being simple, and of really getting on with the job. But she was still incredibly chic.
During her life, Diana's role as the people's princess focused the world's attention on many forgotten causes. Committed to her landmine mission, she had become a serene, confident woman ready for the next stage of her life. It was at a polo match in July 1988 that Diana's life was destined to change forever. She was invited to present the prizes by the event sponsor, Mohammed Al Fayed. On this occasion, she was introduced to his son Dodi. 9 years later, they fell in love. In the romantic atmosphere of the south of France, they enjoyed a brief summer of love. On the yacht, the Jonicle, Diana planned a new life.
I think Dodi Fayed was the premier example of a person like Diana would have. You seek for love, you seek for recognition. The more you knock the doors, the worse it becomes. And I think Dodi Fayed has been the fireworks into a gloomy period of Diana.
Diana had finally found the love she had sought since childhood. Her last evening with Dodi was spent at the Ritz Hotel in Paris.
I knew that he was so much in love with Diana that at the hotel that same night before they died, he met a cousin of his called Hassini. And that man told a friend of mine, he told him, "What are you doing with Princess Diana?" I said, "No, I'm very serious." He said, "Are you?" He said, "I'm marrying her on the 24th of October.
Their lives ended in tragedy. For Diana, the bright day was done. She leaves behind a lifetime of memories. Night had fallen forever on the world's most adored princess. An unforgettable chapter in British history had tragically come to an end. What would Diana have made of the unforgettable scenes at her funeral?
I think she would have been so touched. I'm sure that those would have been the words she would use. Completely overwhelmed by the level, because she never believed that people loved her. She was, you know, the Queen of Hearts, and yet love was something that she was in search of. She never really realised the extent to which people loved her.
As the world's most photographed woman, no other person can compete with Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales. Diana enjoys the spotlight. As a child, her ambition was to become a dancer. As good fortune would have it, she became a princess instead. Like all royals, the Princess of Wales decides to dress according to people's expectations, but Diana does it much better. Whatever the occasion, she's there to please the person or people she's going to be with, and that usually means dressing for the part, something the princess enjoys doing very much. On and off duty, she marshals her expressions perfectly. She's rarely photographed looking bored or dispirited. Over time, the formula has become simpler and more played down. But above all, she wants to be seen for what she does rather than for what she wears. Diana's daywear amounts to an interpretation of an executive woman's wardrobe standing out in a crowd. Even on family occasions, she's rarely caught off guard. Fashionable dressing has never been a special aim of British royalty, yet Diana begins from a position of enjoying clothes. Despite accusations of being a clothes horse, Diana knows looking good is an important part of the show. The principles that govern her dressing at home, abroad, and in the public eye confirm she's a very different creature from the other members of the royal family. The British upper class dress smartly, above all, to be polite and conventional. One sign of her remarkable strength of character is the way she faces up to media attention. She's always fair game to photographers the world over, on and off duty. What's more, being Diana, she's decided it was a game she would win. At the beginning of her marriage, she deliberately appointed herself promoter of British fashion. Diana has emerged adept in the language of clothes. Demanding foreign tours mean 3 or 4 changes a day, causing accusations of extravagance and an obsession with her image. When favourite outfits are worn on several occasions, newspapers interpret this as evidence of thrift in the time of recession. Yet she's managed to lighten the routine of being photographed on parade, a routine which started at the age of 19 with rumours of a romance between her and Prince Charles.
Because you never see her looking like this now. She's got this sort of pink, slightly frumpy evening gown on. And she's got a green woolen Loden coat over the top. It's obviously her coat she wears during the day. She hasn't got an evening gown coat. And she's huddled into this coat, and she suddenly spotted us, and she's absolutely bright red. She went absolutely bright red, really, really red. And she was sort of hogging the wall as she walked along. She was terrified of us as she walked along to the car. And she just looked so young, and I thought, God, this is the beginning of it all.
Caught by TV cameras leaving by the back door of the kindergarten where she worked as a nursery school teacher, who could have speculated that within months women around the world would be looking for inspiration to Lady Diana Spencer, future Princess of Wales and one-day Queen. Speaking about their engagement, the young bride-to-be wore a modest off-the-peg blue suit by Kajana, purchased from Harrods. During her engagement, Diana's exposure to the press was intense. As a public figure in embryo, she began to learn lessons the hard way, particularly when she tried a plunging neckline on one of her first official engagements, much to the delight of the media, who'd been watching her closely.
And it was when the prince took the princess to the Guildhall for dinner one evening, and she was wearing a very low-cut, strapless black dress. And she, in climbing out of the car, she did, or very nearly, the stories differ, fall completely out of this thing. And that was something she could never, ever have foreseen. I mean, who would think of it, you know? But, of course, getting out of this grand limousine was just the the final kiss of death for her. And it was a very embarrassing lesson that was learnt very quickly, and she's never repeated it. And she now wears frightfully brave and exotic things, but they are very much more tightly clasped to her.
Months later, on the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral, millions watched as the young bride unravelled her wedding dress designed by David and Elizabeth Emanuel, made of ivory-coloured silk. Her father, Earl Spencer, accompanied Diana down the aisle. To create a wardrobe befitting a princess, Diana had to start virtually from scratch. In the absence of any formal royal training, how does a young princess know how to dress?
Well, there were two
influences, I guess. One was obviously the circle of friends that she mixed in, and the other was actually what was fashionable at the time. And I guess we're talking about 1980, 1981 now, aren't we? She was very, that sort of set that she moved in was very much into sort of neck things, you know, frilly hair and little kind of cravat things, and rather sort of, we hadn't hit the suits yet, because the rest of the very high fashion world was in amongst the Japanese at this point, when we were all wearing black with sort of, you know, things, holes pulled out of it and so on and so forth. It would have been totally unsuitable for the Princess of Wales. And so she was really she dressed in a very English county stroke Chelsea way, which was absolutely perfect for the fiancé of the Prince of Wales. There wasn't any question about it, that everybody in England totally understood the signal she gave out in the way that she was dressed as a 19-year-old. And I think for its purpose, it served her very, very well to look very conservative and very sort of English and beautiful English Rose County sort of person. So I think that was her first, I mean, she obviously then started to look at what she actually did look like, and she felt, well, maybe I could, you know, have a bit more neck showing and so on and so forth. So nowadays, when she absolutely, I mean, she doesn't, you know, she's just so confident that it doesn't make any difference. So the difference is extraordinary from that, you know, sort of chin down with was clothed, and now it's sort of wonderfully, and sort of she just feels comfortable in anything she wears.
Diana's first official foreign tour was to Australia and New Zealand in 1983. For the first time in her life, she realised the need for a huge wardrobe to meet the demands of the job. Having a suitable change of clothes was a formidable task, particularly for a young mother constantly under public scrutiny and intense pressure.
That was a gruelling tour, 6 weeks, and I think they vowed never to do a tour that long again. She had William with her, and of course he was only, 6 months old at that stage, and it was just a whistle-stop tour, always travelling, and they kept the baby back at a ranch in central Australia, and they kept commuting backwards and forwards so that she could be with the baby. Since then, they've never ever had a long tour like it, because you could tell after about a week she was just totally exhausted. I mean, not only was it, I mean, also it was her first trip. She's learning how to meet people. You know, it was all sort of new to her and very daunting. But to have 6 weeks of it too, and 6 weeks for us too, I mean, trying to keep up with them. But it was exciting because it was all fresh. You know, we didn't really know much about her, and everybody was still sort of getting over the wedding and the excitement of that. And the Australians were really sort of, huge crowds turned out to get a glimpse of her. She was very shy still. It was an interesting visit, but too tiring.
Walkabouts are occasions when Diana can almost forget the conventions and restrictions of being a leading member of the world's preeminent royal family and come face to face with her adoring public. Everybody loves to catch a glimpse of a princess dressed in clothes to which they can relate. Soon the girly outfits were to vanish as her wardrobe began to reflect a growing confidence.
Well, this was her first big tour. It's her first big sort of tour away for weeks. And it was about 4 weeks into the tour, and we'd had lots of sort of girly outfits all through the tour. Lots of day dresses, and on the evening clothes had all been sort of full gowns and the sort of things you would expect her to wear. But then suddenly, on the last night, she turned up at the dinner wearing this really, what I would call her first sexy outfit. And it was a very slinky, fitted dress, beaded, and it looked very sort of dynasty and glamorous. And it was so different from everything she'd worn on the whole trip. This outfit actually looked, without having a low cut, it looked wonderful.
Diana fell naturally into the routine of royalty. She developed her own sense of style and fashion. One of the principal beneficiaries of her high-profile public role was the British fashion industry. Down the years, they've benefited particularly from her position in the royal family firm. Designers like Belleville Sassoon, Jasper Conran, and Bruce Oldfield are among her favourites. Catherine Walker of the Chelsea Design Company, always at the helm of British fashion, has constantly topped Diana's list. Very soon, her designs were copied in the high street shops as her bows and gathers gave way to the sleek, tailored styles cultivating a more sophisticated image. She tried out everything she could in order to experience what was around in the British fashion scene. Above all, it was the rags-to-riches London designer Bruce Oldfield who introduced her to the sleek, glamorous film star look, replacing the strapless top with the big flowery skirt.
Bruce was the first person, I think, really to introduce her to a kind of swathed, more sort of glamorous, film starry sort of look. I mean, she did have those dresses before, but they were much more the sort of bustier with the big skirt. And Bruce tended to make them kind of slinky and rather wonderful and sort of gathered and with a kind of thing here. So I think he freed her and made her aware that she could perhaps, you know, be a bit more shapely with the evening clothes rather than just wear the classic hunting, shooting, fishing ball dress that you tend to get. So I think he probably pushed her in that direction quite fast.
The princess looks particularly good wearing Catherine Walker's designs. Her fitted suits look perfect on Diana's shapely figure. The rising sun motif on the hat was originally created for an official visit to Japan. The hat, by royal milliner Philip Somerville, tops off the whole ensemble.
The English fashion scene benefited tremendously from having this extraordinary patronage of the world's most photographed woman. I mean, I don't think anybody could quite believe that she was actually there wearing British. And it was never, no public statement was ever made. Nobody, I mean, there's this myth about how she was told she had to wear British, and there is a complete myth. I mean, the princess felt that she should, as she does in all things, support what was right to do, and she did it. And it was, I mean, it was like a goldmine for British fashion. In the 80s, she really was an enormous help to us, without probably even knowing it in the beginning.
One British designer who's benefited from Diana's support of homegrown talent is Victor Edelstein, famous for his incredibly grand style supported only by simple accessories.
Victor can get incredibly grand, which is wonderful. You know, you get those huge collars and enormous amounts of jewels and huge skirts. And I think she sort of travels to Victor for those kind of things from time to time.
On an official visit to Washington in 1985, the Americans were not slow to celebrate a royal tour in their own way. Diana and the American people hit it off immediately. She enjoyed their warmth and openness, and they were charmed by her good looks and friendly manner. President and Mrs. Reagan were the hosts at a glittering White House ball, the highlight of the tour, and for Washington, the social event of the decade. For the occasion, Diana looked radiant in a dark navy velvet spectacular gown, designed naturally by Victor Edelstein. She wore a 7-strand pearl choker with a huge sapphire clasp and sapphire and diamond earrings.
The thing about the Princess of Wales is when she actually does dress up to go to things like the White House Gala, she really understands that simplicity is, above all things, the master. And so she looks incredible. I mean, she really does. She can do it. I mean, she really says, okay, guys, you know, whatever you've said about me in the press at this point, I'm going to go for it. And I think that particular occasion, she did look extraordinary. And it was the moment she had to look extraordinary, and she did it. She knows when to do it, I'm quite sure.
At a dinner in Bonn, the princess arrived wearing for the first time in public the matching set of exquisite jet and diamond jewels, a gift from the Sultan of Oman. Final touches were added by the Spencer family tiara and a deep blue velvet evening gown by Victor Edelstein.
Well, her taste in jewellery is marvellous because she's been given a sort of queen's ransom in jewels, a lot of it by the Saudi royal family. They gave her a lot of sapphires as a wedding present. And she got a lot of family jewels, the Spencer family tiara and the what we call the Queen Mary tiara, which isn't strictly speaking a Queen Mary tiara, but it's one that Queen Mary used to wear. And she wears those two. And then she combines these fabulous jewels, real jewels, with a lot of stuff she buys, you know, Butler and Wilson or Harvey Nichols. Wonderful, inexpensive jewellery, but looks dazzling on her. And I think that shows the great taste and style she's got, that she can wear something like that cost, you know, a few pounds, and any woman could afford it. And on her, it looks like it cost $1 million.
You can have all the Chanel buttons in the world, and there are a lot of things you mustn't put with them, and an awful lot of jewellery you can't wear with them. And so she's really, in the end, too, she's very much a minimalist with accessories. She doesn't load them on. You see a choker from time to time, but mostly when you see the little Catherine Walker suits, there's very little jewellery, and there's the beautiful hat, which is absolutely the way it should be.
First impressions are always memorable. How Diana looks the moment she steps off a plane is the image that finds its way onto television screens and front pages around the world. Being a woman constantly in the public eye has additional image problems, particularly on a windy day. What is foremost in Diana's mind as she steps off the plane on yet another round of handshaking and official duties?
Are there any creases, I should think? I would think that's the one thing getting off planes is it's nerve-wracking is if you're totally creased. But I would imagine everything's beautifully pressed. I don't know, but I should think a lot of I would think that the preparation that goes into those moments must be, you know, enormous.
The Princess of Wales has about 75 hats. Naturally, she knows how to wear them to bring out the best in an accompanying outfit.
She wears them so beautifully now, and I think in the early stages she wore them in the way English women wear hats to weddings, plonked on the head with the veil pulled over, or the fluff, the feather. And she, in very, very, very fast, we found her wearing them where they should be worn, which is across here. I mean, despite the fact that the photographers probably couldn't get into the eyes or couldn't see anything, but she really, almost immediately, maybe 2 years into being the Princess of Wales and having to wear a lot of hats, she suddenly realised she had to wear them the way they should be worn. Because she has great shoulders and terrific posture, she looks marvellous with those, you know, very broad hats. And once you wear those hats, you actually begin to like wearing them. She really does look like, you know, she could be a Vogue cover wearing those hats. But because she wears them properly, and she wears them with the right outfits, which is terribly important. I mean, she's always the one on the steps of the church at Christmas, you know, when they've all gone to the service, and she's immaculate. Everything matches, everything's perfect, and the hat's exactly where it should be. So, I mean, it's a great art wearing a hat properly, too. It's a great art.
Hair is important, too. Early on, she experimented sweeping her long hair back off her face before deciding she looks better with it short.
Her hair's been getting shorter and shorter, and that, I think, tells you a lot about her, that she's not a vain woman. Her hair's short because it's practical, it's easy to manage. It's easy when you swim in every morning and you come back and get ready to go out. Short hair is quicker to redo. And if she had long hair, it would take hours and hours, and it would be a lot more fussy. So although most people consider long hair as more glamorous, she doesn't bother with that. She's sort of cut down everything in her life like that, getting dressed, getting out the door, down to a minimum. She can do it in like 5 or 10 minutes flat.
Generally, women grow into their hair. I mean, I think during the sort of 18, 19, 20 age group, you're finding out what your hair does and doesn't do. And most of us were allowed the 20s to experiment, but the Princess was not allowed that because obviously the media attention was so huge. So I suppose she very sensibly got herself organised with hairdressers who could deal with the way she wanted it. But that is what happened to her hair, as far as I can see, is it's all to do with relation to the neck. And as she became more aware that she could expose her neck, so the hair started to come up and get shorter and shorter and shorter. And as her confidence grew, she was able to deal with much shorter hair. And the Princess very soon came around to thinking, well, you know, maybe I've got this nice thing here in the jawline and the chokers and the bit, and if I goes up, up, up. And finally, nowadays, I think that it's probably much more functional for her to have the hair she has now, because she's obviously a busy mum now, which she wasn't 10 years ago. And you actually can't spend time on your hair if you're a busy mum and you're working and you're out and you're trying to get them from school and they've got to look good and you've got to get up. And so I think it looks wonderful now, and I mean, from a purely functional point of view, it has to be that way. I mean, once you've had short hair that works well, you never grow it again.
Activities centred around being a young mother, particularly at school sports day, naturally calls for a suitable kind of casual clothes befitting to a princess.
She looks wonderful in casual clothes. I mean, the picture for me, the best picture, is the one of the school race. You know, when she had her shoes off and she had that long skirt on and she was going for the winning line. Do you remember that? It's a great, great picture. And I think she looks great in jeans, and, you know, she wears the odd silly baseball cap. I just think that, you know, with all the strict dressing that she has to do all the time, it's very nice that she can actually just go out and wear jeans and wear kind of rough riding boots and a great sort of sloppy sweater. And I mean, if you are somebody who appears in public or has to dress up all the time, you've got to have a very safe, nice, easy, comfortable wardrobe that's your friend.
she has 3 wardrobes, actually, for her life. One wardrobe is the working wardrobe, we've already mentioned, the one that she wears on official engagements. Then there's the kind of Kensington mummy look when she goes to pick up the children from school. And this is a bit of a Sloane kind of wardrobe. She wears a bit of, sometimes from Escada or designers like that. Mondi, she used to wear a lot of Mondi, you know, jackets and skirts and trousers from Mondi or culottes. And then there's what I think of sometimes as the Essex girl look that she has. I think there's a bit of Essex girl in most women, but it comes out in her when you see her on weekends. She looks very, very ordinary then. You would often walk straight past her and never recognised her. Sometimes when she's shopping in Cirencester on a Saturday morning. Maybe it's deliberate, maybe it's camouflage, but I don't think it's very flattering. It's probably very comfortable. But I think sometimes the Essex girl creeps into official work. Once recently she wore a red evening gown by Bruce Oldfield, which has a gold fleck in the fabric. And it's rather a nice evening gown. Well, it was when she first wore it in the mid-'80s. But then she put a pearl choker with about 5 strings of pearls in it. And that seemed so over the top. The combination of pearls, gold, bright red, it was very flashy. And I thought that was a bit of a mistake, but then we all have off days, don't we?
Diana discovered the coat dress. It proved to be a practical and yet extremely smart addition to her working wardrobe. Among her favourites is one by Catherine Walker in a pink and white check wool.
Of course, over the years, the coat dress has become quite popular with her. It's been a very good workhorse sort of outfit because it looks very smart always, and yet it's comfortable. She's got many, many coat dresses in different fabrics, but this was really the first Catherine Walker coat dress we saw. And it's beige, well, creamy actually, with a navy stripe in it, and it looks quite nautical. And in fact, the first time she wore it in Italy, it was a visit to a naval base, and she wore a cheeky little sailor's hat with it, and it looked quite appropriate actually, standing on the deck of the ship. But the whole outfit over the years just has always looked good, always looks crisp, fresh, never creases, and whatever event she's at, it looks wonderful.
On official occasions, Diana is never caught off guard. Her skirt seldom blows up, and she is rarely photographed climbing in and out of cars with her thighs showing. With maturity, she's learned how to conduct herself with photographers. The press does not make the distinction between the Princess of Wales as a royal figurehead and Princess Di, the celebrity. On a recent official trip to Canada, her appearance confirms she knows all the tricks of the royal trade, particularly when it comes to dressing.
It sort of shows her as 1992, sort of no fuss, an elegant sort of shape on the clothes. The jacket is long, very plain neckline, gone are all the ruffles and whatever from all those years before. Sort of, it's half like a business suit, but it's got a little bit more glamour to it. It's got a very short skirt in dark chocolate brown velvet, and the jacket is edged in it too. It looks elegant. It's a very pretty colour on her too. It makes her look, the colour emphasises her skin tones.
But according to some press people, Diana doesn't always get it right, as they discovered on a visit to France.
When she got out of the car, we almost didn't recognise her because she was wearing a very unusual hat, and it was the first time we had seen her without her hair. So, in fact, you didn't recognise her at first because all her hair was concealed, and this big hat was over her face. And it was a Philip Somerville hat in felt, and it had a black snood attached to it and tied at the back in a sort of scarf fashion that completely concealed every inch of hair. And I thought it looked very French, very chic, and obviously she did too. But all the men, my colleagues, didn't like it at all, and they all thought that she looked fat, made her face look fat. I didn't agree, but obviously she read it in the papers, their comments, and has never worn it again since.
The hats are, I think they're rather wonderful. Most of them come from Philip Somerville, who can make any woman look a dream. He produces the most flattering hats in London, probably. And they're ideal because she kind of broke the royal rule about you mustn't wear big hats. They can conceal too much of your face and upset the photographers. I remember in India we were all groaning because she was walking along this wonderful Mem Saab-looking outfit that just looked like she'd stepped out of the days of the Raj. And the hat was covering most of her face, but then she'd lift her head. She knows what to do, and when she got close to the camera, she would suddenly look up and then everybody get a shot. But the whole effect was just absolutely perfect for that setting. It was in the presidential palace in Delhi, and the outfit she wore just looked like something out of the 30s in the last days of the Raj. It was wonderful.
As a performer by nature, Diana enjoys the routine of being photographed on parade, although public interest in her activities can be intense, particularly on family occasions, with posses of hungry photographers in hot pursuit, appetites whetted by exotic Caribbean island backgrounds. Diana wants to keep her children out of the glare of publicity, but when duty calls, she happily makes herself available to support her media image. On this occasion, the photographers were particularly demanding.
Whilst she was on the beach posing for the photo call, she had on a one-piece swimsuit, which in fact she looked very good in. But as soon as the photo call had finished and the photographers had started to drift away in their boats, once they got to about 200 yards out, she appeared again on the beach from behind a bush in a minuscule red bikini. And it was sort of like a sort of tantalising the photographers because they were sort of so near yet so far, because it was too far to take a picture. And they said that she looked stunning in this teeny-weeny bikini prancing up and down the beach. And they all tried to make the boat turn around to go back, and there was this huge, great big row with the boatmen. They were all grabbing the wheel. These little boats were all rocking all over the place, and the Royal Protection were waving them away. And it was almost as if she'd done it on purpose. I think she sort of come to terms with the fact that the press were going to be there, whatever she did, so she'd have to learn to live with it. And I think she then realised that if she did give us a good picture, it would take the pressure off her. We would sort of disappear off in a far happier mood, and she could get on with whatever she was doing.
Pressure to perform, to look good at all times, is taken for granted by everyone except experienced royal watchers.
Well, she does a fantastic amount, and I think that's where we've got to give her a lot of credit. I mean, if you see somebody in the glossy magazines like Joan Collins or Ivana Trump, they have nothing else in life to do except work on looking wonderful. They've got endless hours to devote to pampering themselves. Now, the Princess of Wales doesn't. She has to squeeze that sort of thing into a very, very busy schedule as a working woman and as a wife and mother. And so she has to do it at the odd hours that she can manage. So she goes swimming, 7:30 in the morning, does 30 lengths of the pool at Buckingham Palace, and then she'll dash back home and get changed and have her hair done and take Harry to school and then rush off the other end of the country and do an engagement, and then she'll come back and maybe play a set of tennis in the afternoon, or whenever she's got a morning off, try and play tennis with friends. And she also has somebody to come in and advise her on workouts. She has an instructor that helps a couple of times a week. So she needs to maintain a fantastic level of fitness because of the strain of her life. I mean, foreign tours are exhausting.
On an official trip to Japan in 1986, media interest was unrelenting. It was dime mania on a world scale. Her pop star status was hard to believe. In a modest way, her wardrobe included an off-the-peg dress from tatters in London's Fulham Road. With great forethought for her Japanese hosts, it was emblazoned with rising sun motifs.
This was the first very obvious example of what I call flag dressing, when she wears an outfit that sort of honours her host, or it sort of ties in somehow with the country in the national colours or whatever. In Kyoto, she visited the castle, and it was a tea ceremony. It was very traditional. Everybody was in kimonos, and she wore this red and white silk dress from tatters, and it was a white base with big red, large sort of rising sun circles, exactly as the Japanese flag. And she had a big red hat, and it just was sort of very appropriate for the occasion.
The Japanese returned the compliment by presenting Diana with a kimono, their national dress, even if it was a little bit too long for her. On an official visit to Hong Kong in November 1989, it was a Philip Somerville hat in the shape of a Chinese temple, which Diana had to keep a tight hold on. Catherine Walker designed the brightly coloured silk suit, a short red jacket, a cream camisole top, and a wraparound sarong skirt in brilliant purple. As if in competition with the dazzling images of the Orient, Diana was original in her choice of colours.
Diana has defied all the traditional rules about colour. And I think that actually is one of the most exciting things about her. Every outfit she wears is remarkable in some way or another. It's not just beautifully cut. She has put violent pink with red, which you would have thought simply couldn't work. She's been terrifically brave about the things she's chosen to wear together.
The outfit she wore to visit the Taj Mahal, which I thought was a bit of a strange outfit to wear for sightseeing because it was very hot and she was walking around the outside of the ponds in front of the Taj. But she had on this quite formal suit that she'd worn before in Hong Kong. But I think she must have chosen it because of the colours, because when you looked at the photographs, the colours, that she stands out so much, the red and the mauve, against this white marble. It looks really stunning. And in fact, the colours do blend in with all the saris. If you look at her standing against all the local women, to begin with, you thought, why has she chosen that outfit to wear today? It seems a funny thing to wear. When you look at the pictures, it just fits in with all the colours of India. It looks wonderful.
Travelling abroad, the climate is not always kind to the royal visitor. In the call of duty, the Prince and Princess of Wales regularly encounter the rigours of extreme heat. For Diana, looking and feeling good demands cool clothes to endure the hottest hours of the day.
Actually, she's very good in the heat because I always wonder how she looks so cool. Well, her face looks extremely hot. She has beads of perspiration and she goes redder and redder. But actually her clothes, you never see them looking sticky or sweaty. Or, when she's been sitting against a chair in extreme heat in Indonesia even, when she got up, she didn't have any sort of sticky marks at the back of. I mean, I don't know, she must have some mysterious secret deodorant formula or something because she just looks so super cool.
With maturity, Diana has learned to conduct herself in public, avoiding awkward or frivolous moments, particularly when her husband is around.
She's very cheeky when she's on her own away from the Prince, actually. She's more extrovert when she's on her own, and she seems more relaxed when she's not with the Prince. I suppose it's just that she hasn't got to watch what he's doing and sort of remember what she's supposed to be doing at the same time. She can just sort of wander along on her own. But she's got a very, very good sense of humour. She's a great giggler, and she's very quick-witted. And someone will say something, and she'll come up with a very cheeky, quick-witted answer instantly. And she's very easy rapport with sort of banter with people.
The relaxed, friendly Australian manner and the great outdoors bring out the best in Diana. She has family connections down under, and the Australian bicentenary celebrations in 1988 was a perfect opportunity for her to relax, despite the occasional sound effect. Her wardrobe included an emerald green coat dress by Catherine Walker and a cool short-sleeved red dress by Alistair Blair, characterised by very short cap sleeves, extremely practical in sticky heat. Any suggestions of discomfort are quickly dispelled with a glorious photo opportunity at the bow of a paddle steamer. At a dinner dance in Melbourne, Catherine Walker scored again with a shell-pink figure-hugging long dress with bursts of bright blue floral patterns. On 2 previous visits to Australia in her younger days, Diana showed great confidence in the way she supported her husband, particularly on the dance floor. Naturally, on close occasions like this, the press always speculate about the state of the royal marriage.
I think every marriage goes through ups and downs. Maybe they've had their problems, but I know that they are both devoted to their children and devoted to their jobs. I think she did a lot for him, and of course giving him 2 children and giving him a kind of a home, that was the greatest change of all. And I think that, you know, the birth of his 2 children were probably the greatest days in his life. They form a terrific partnership for Britain as ambassadors abroad, and you know, they really enjoy their jobs. They do feel they can make a difference, and I think we've seen that for ourselves. The Princess, what she's done for AIDS, which was a subject that was practically untouchable in the beginning, and she has totally turned around the world's attitude to AIDS victims. She's probably done more to destroy fear and prejudice than any member of the royal family in the last 200 years.
At every opportunity, Diana campaigns for a better understanding around the world of distressing social problems like drug abuse and AIDS.
She has turned into a really serious woman who has a very real talent for people. That is not a PR exercise. It's nothing, it's not done for the cameras. That is absolutely Diana as a human being reaching out to other human beings. And that is the talent that she has, just brilliantly and naturally, and in a way that no other member of the royal family, or anyone that I've actually seen in operation like that, has.
The princess is always respectfully dressed. On a visit to the Muslim Gulf states, local customs and religion were respected. A desert picnic in Saudi Arabia meant sitting cross-legged. It had to be planned, and for the occasion, Catherine Walker had created a blue and white tunic with white pantaloons. Strictly no legs showing. On a visit to Pakistan, again local custom was observed. Diana appeared wearing a Catherine Walker creation designed for the occasion and to match the sumptuous surroundings of the presidential palace. For official occasions like this, Diana's gowns are paid for by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office as part of the cost of showing the flag around the world. Her beautiful gown of shell pink silk had a bodice inlaid with encrusted pearls.
One of the Catherine Walker dresses has got little paisley designs all over it, which is wonderful. I mean, to actually compliment a country by having a sumptuous evening dress embroidered in that way, I think that's magnificent.
This evening gown, I think, is my favourite outfit of everything she's ever worn. And it doesn't photograph well either. When you see it, you can't stop staring at it because it's so beautiful. The chiffon silk is so soft and flowy, and the workings of embroidery on the bodice are so fine. It's just exquisite, the whole dress. And as she walks, it flows with her. And she wore it in Pakistan, and because of local customs, about showing the neck and being very demure, she wore a very long stretch of the same fabric, just sort of thrown around her shoulder, sort of like Grace Kelly type a bit, just sort of slung over her shoulder that sort of flayed out behind her. And it looked beautiful. And as she walked along, because she was so tall next to all these Pakistan dignitaries who were tiny, this dress made her look even taller. She looked about 10 foot tall, and it all sort of flowed out. It was a wonderful dress.
Royal protocol demands standing out in a crowd in a dignified and respectful manner. On a visit to the Vatican, the Princess of Wales wore a black lace calf-length dress by Catherine Walker, with a dropped V-shaped skirt with a lace veil in the same fabric. Diana's choice proved yet again that a coat dress was practical and an important part of a working wardrobe. In Florence, a cheeky addition of a black bow tie made an interesting variation to a white wool suit by Jasper Conran. Diana's tastes are definitely influenced by her love for foreign travel and exotic places, not least Italy, where her choice of clothes reflects her eye for the original look. One of her favourite Italian designers is Moschino.
Well, Moschino is a wonderful designer, and he's a very witty designer, and you always feel very sort of jolly if you wear his clothes and very happy, and there's always sort of pun in them, or there's kind of a joke. I mean, like the big houndstooth that she wears quite a lot now. If you could pick a designer for her, Moschino is a great one for you know, big occasions. Well, not big occasions, but I mean actually, you know, the bouquet occasions and walking down and the shaking hands occasions, because it makes people smile and it is something different, and they do look great, and he cuts very well.
On a visit to France, the Paris fashion world was captivated when Diana stepped from the plane wearing an outfit by Chanel, their national design label.
I was delighted when she went to France and she wowed them all in her Chanel suit, which was bright red, and the longer skirt and the hat and everything. I thought that was terrific. It was very important for the princess to make an enormous impact because obviously it's the fashion capital of the world. And I think she chose a very good outfit, and I think she looked terrific, and they really were bowled over. They were completely mesmerised by the fact she didn't get off the plane wearing an English designer, which would have been, for the export business, wonderful, but she actually came wearing their top label.
It was the first time Diana had worn French clothes on French soil, but later all eyes turned to an evening dress designed by Victor Edelstein.
It was at the Élysée Palace, a dinner, very elegant, extremely elegant French women arriving in these wonderful gowns. The whole place was just exactly as you'd imagine a sort of super French banquet to be. And she arrived and got out the car, and this dress, I don't know, it just looked something from another era. It's in a very heavy ivory Duchess satin. It shimmers, and the bodice of it is all worked with embroidery and has a short jacket. And it's very, very elegant, very regal.
Often Diana will arrive wearing something that's been seen before, like this red woolen suit with black lapels by Rifat Ozbek.
He's always been the darling of the sort of, not really truly glamorous, but people that really understand and like fashion. And he's, you know, you find people, like, I mean, a lot of people like Tina Turner wear Ozbek. There's something about him, in the same way there is about Moschino, that is, he's a very good designer, he cuts beautifully, but he's a little bit witty and a little bit scary. And so when you actually start to wear Ozbek a lot, you know a lot about fashion, you know a lot about yourself, you know many things. And he does do quite outrageous things. And I'm sure the princess has probably got some of those. We've only seen the rather sort of tamer ones, but he's good, and I'm glad she wears his clothes because they're beautiful.
With more than 350 public engagements a year, Diana's choice of clothes reflect the activities of a busy working woman. Always at the centre of attention, her experience tells her exactly what is suitable for the occasion.
When she first became the Princess of Wales, I'm sure that she wanted to have endless clothes made because she had to try and see what worked and how she suited a longer jacket or a shorter jacket or a longer skirt or a gathered skirt or a full skirt. And I think what happens finally, I mean, I certainly, if you're 10 years into wearing a lot of clothes, you begin to know exactly what you want. So in fact, where 5 suits had to do, 1 suit does. Because you can wear it often, you can change it slightly, you aren't really bothered, you know you look good in it, and that's the end of it. And it doesn't, you can wear it endless occasions, and it doesn't matter who says what to you, but that's the suit you feel good in. That's the true sign of confidence, is that she's actually wearing a lot of things now very often that we've seen before, and nobody's commenting, nobody cares. It's because what they really want to see is the Princess of Wales. And she's come over that great, what is she wearing now? We all know it's Rifat again. And it's a marvellous change in her that we don't actually care too much what she's wearing anymore, because she always looks wonderful, and it could be something we've seen, 2 weeks before.
Above all, though, it's on really formal occasions like state banquets in presidential palaces that Diana's elegance is so arresting. Her wardrobe for this visit to Indonesia included a gown in ivory lace and satin designed by David and Elizabeth Emanuel. Careful about what she drinks, Diana refuses a glass of champagne, preferring water instead.
When she's really dressed up in the evenings and she looks really stunning, she's all sort of glamorous and glittery, and she arrives and she knows she looks good, and she's sort of got a little swagger to her walk and looks very happy with herself, and she sort of glows towards the cameras when she's like that. She reacts to the cameras when she knows she's looking good. She's sort of very cheeky and good-humoured. She'll sort of do a little, not a dance, but sort of shuffle around and move around so that we get good shots. And this dress is an example of that sort of confident dressing, sort of showing off her sort of sexy shape as she walks along. And it's a very long-fitted tube dress and completely worked all over it with beads. And it's got a short jacket with it, with a very high collar. And as she walks along, it's a very high slit at the back, so even from the back it looks good. And it fits her sort of hips, and because of her height, it's really accentuated. She just looks like a long white slither walking along. And she always seems to wear it when she's got a good tan. She always chooses it to emphasise it. Looks very, very glamorous.
She understands taste, she understands proportion. She totally knows if fashion. Just lately we've lost our shoulder pads, as you might have noticed. We probably haven't in the last 2 or 3 years. We've begun to lose our shoulder pads after the huge, dynasty kind of thing went on during the 80s, after the kind of Japanese thing had finished. And the princess immediately has lost. She's really au fait with what's going on. I mean, she does totally... Once you're in the fashion sort of thing, it's not a question of being a fashion victim or not having your own taste or not being told by other people to do it. It's something you do. You just evolve with it. And she is marvellous, and she just seems to... she's almost ahead of us at the moment.
She looks better than she did right at the beginning. She's slimmer. She is more gorgeous, and she has a more distinctive dress style. I think that's because early on she was very influenced by perhaps her mother, family and friends. She wore a very traditional English look. Lots of girly, swirly ball gowns that were very romantic and very pretty on a girl of 19, but they're totally unsuitable for a more sophisticated woman. And so as she learnt a lot about the world and about life, you could see a great transformation come over her. She dropped all those full-skirted romantic ball gowns that used to look like a portrait by Winterhalter on the walls of Windsor Castle, and she got into a very sleek, chic look. I think that was also because she began studying fashion, making her own decisions, and dropped the advice of some of the fashion experts she talked to in the beginning, and realised that the continental women she met, who looked incredibly elegant, always wore very slim-fitting clothes, the sort of clothes that reveal the figure underneath. When you've got a great figure, it's nice to wear clothes that emphasise it. So in a way, the demure Diana look went out the window, and the devastating, dazzling Diana came along. And I think that when she wears one of those Victor Edelstein evening gowns now, there's nobody can be more of a knockout than she can. I mean, I've seen her walk into a room and just the women just sort of kind of reel back. She hits them like a wave on a surfing beach and knocks everybody sideways. She just looks fantastic.
Dressing up is just part of the job for Diana. She is instinctive about what she wears and naturally intuitive about her role. Calming nerves and easing tension in a charming and humorous way is second nature to her. In people's affections, Diana is a natural successor to the Queen Mother. As the role of monarchy moves towards the 21st century, Diana, model princess, will be there, bringing to the face of royalty a unique and personal blend of style, dignity, and charm.
Few lives were less ordinary than that of Diana, Princess of Wales. Born noble, she became royal, but was denied her destiny to be queen. Beautiful but tragically fated, her legacy will prove greater than thrones and crowns. She will be a queen in people's hearts. After her divorce and rejection by the British royal family, Diana discarded the gowns that had once enhanced her position as Princess of Wales and future Queen. Unwanted reminders of an unhappy past, their dispersal marked the end of an era for Diana. She was starting a new independent life. Each dress held the aura of her glamour, her allure, and her unforgettable style. Diana's magic had a value of its own. 2 months before her death, 79 of her dresses were auctioned by Christie's in New York for charity. Each dress tells a story of love and loss. Lot 35, a scarlet lace cocktail dress worn just after her famous television interview in 1995. Lot 66, a glamorous dinner dress worn to a concert at Versailles in 1994, her first official overseas visit after withdrawing from public life the previous year. Lot 55, a midnight blue silk crepe gown worn in New York in 1996 as Diana prepared herself for divorce from Prince Charles. Lot 11, a blue and white satin dress worn in Hong Kong in 1995 when she travelled the globe as a semi-detached royal. The sale raised millions for charity. Disenchanted with the British establishment, Diana increasingly turned to America, which serenaded her as did Tony Bennett, as its adopted princess. And when chat show host Phil Donahue danced with her in Chicago in 1996, millions of Americans would have stepped into his shoes. With her elegance, grace and charm, Diana had replaced Jackie Kennedy as America's uncrowned queen. And when statesman Henry Kissinger fell under Diana's spell, so did an entire nation.
I think she loved the warmth of the Americans, although she also found it sometimes rather overwhelming because perhaps the British Reserve, even though everybody adored her here, there was still that sort of sense of decorum perhaps. In America, she was just, you know, stampeded, I think. But she adored them because they were spontaneous like her.
In 1995, Kissinger presented Diana with the Humanitarian of the Year award. No other British royal had been so honoured in America.
She was tremendously fond of people like Kissinger, adored sitting next to him at dinner. They got on like a house on fire. Ladies such as Elizabeth Dole made a big impression on her. She said she had such a wonderful sense of humour. You see, this is the thing that Diana appreciated. Somebody who could not be so withdrawn with her or shy of her, but somebody who could sort of just connect with her.
The Humanitarian Award was a victory for Diana against the British establishment, who considered her a showgirl.
I want to say a sincere and heartfelt thank you for this award. It is humbling to receive it and to know that some of you seated here tonight feel that I should be honoured in this way.
Could you look forward, man?
General Colin Powell and media star Barbara Walters were among America's great and good who recognised Diana's potential as a remarkable envoy for her country.
She was both enormously interesting too and a very good ambassador for us to what one might call the glittering world of parts of the United States. She was a very visible representative in the fashion world there, in the theatre, movie world, and also at the higher levels of politics. She obviously connected very well with President and Mrs. Clinton. But at the other end of the scale, and perhaps most importantly, she was an extraordinary ambassador for us to the third world, what we used to call the third world, to people in countries who were suffering from one thing or another, which she identified with at home, but which she picked up very strongly when she was abroad, whether again it was AIDS in Africa or the plight of children who she visited with Mother Teresa in India, or the whole landmines issue where she was so important in identifying and drawing attention to something which governments have been talking about for a long time, but no one in general had remote interest in.
Mother Teresa of Calcutta was Diana's guiding light through her devotion to the poor, the sick and the dispossessed. In June 1997, the tall young princess visited the elderly frail nun in New York. Who would have guessed that within 3 months they would die within days of each other? Actress Joan Collins said after their deaths, "Diana was a true humanitarian. Now that Mother Teresa is gone, who is like that? There is no one. We have lost someone incredibly special." Another continent, a different culture. To support sufferers of a disease that afflicts the whole world, Diana travelled with her friend Jemima Khan to Pakistan to help raise funds for her husband Imran's cancer hospital in Lahore. Against home criticism that such visits had a political edge, Diana displayed the warmth, kindness and compassion that distinguished her from the more aloof and distant royal family. Diana used touch to communicate her empathy with those in pain. She created a rapport wherever she went, giving hope and comfort, especially to sick children. Her fervent speeches brought international recognition to the hospitals and care centres for otherwise forgotten victims.
This is the only private cancer hospital in the world that treats 80% of its patients free.
Diana once said, "Nothing gives me more happiness than trying to help the most vulnerable people in society. It's a goal and an essential part of my life, a kind of destiny."
She had the most incredible level of compassion, and she was not afraid of illness or sickness or death. And the other thing was about Diana was that she felt, particularly with the terminally ill, that it was very honest and that there was nothing left to lose, and so people lost their shyness, so she could really talk to them. And there was this incredible sort of depth and intimacy that perhaps was lacking when she met other people at more formal occasions.
But formality and protocol were everything to the House of Windsor. As mother to William and Harry, heirs to the throne, Diana had to prepare her sons for their royal destiny. Victory in Japan was commemorated in August 1995, one of several occasions when her boys had to appear in public and behave like adults. Harry, nearly 10, found it difficult to concentrate, but he looked for guidance to his parents and older brother. William, 13, had already learned to cope with pomp and ceremony. 2 years later, he was shattered by the loss of his mother. Her death would change him forever.
He has become a very strong young man. He was always strong, much stronger than his father, who is rather weak and who tends to blame other people for things that go wrong in his life. William was strong of mind when he was a boy, perhaps even a bit willful. Since his mother died, and particularly with Harry to look after, to oversee, he's assumed an importance, which he wears very well. I mean, he happens to be, tall, and he's a good-looking chap, and he's very bright. But he changed in becoming a more independent boy, in taking control, in a sense, of the situation. And he was crucial, of course, to Harry's stability.
Within days of the Victory Parade, William started senior school at Eton College. His parents chose Eton for its close proximity to London and to Windsor Castle. Charles refused to send him to the Scottish school Gordonston, where he himself had been very unhappy as a student. Eton had educated generations of Diana's family, including her father and brother, but she still sought William's approval before sending him there.
She treated him like a grown-up, which is what every teenager longs for. She'd ask his advice, say, "Well, William, what do you think about this? Should I do this or shouldn't I?" Now, that is very flattering. And she didn't tell him what to do. I mean, Prince Charles is exactly the same. I've heard this for several years now, that whenever they decide that they're going to go somewhere or do something, or there's going to be a photo call, they say, "Well, we were thinking of doing this. What do you think, William?" And they also ask Harry. And they ask for their input.
Diana identified in William personal qualities that his father lacked. She actively groomed her eldest son to be king. As he grew up, William became a junior confidant to his mother.
She did drop an incredible amount of responsibility on William's very slim young shoulders. He was, barely 10 years old when she started revealing how she felt in front of him. And I think, as a result, William's matured very fast. He's much more mature than most boys of 15. But that's also perhaps because of the daunting burden that lies ahead of him, the monarchy. And when you're 15, you might want to be a rock star or a nuclear physicist. You don't want your life mapped out for you. Kids of that age want to feel free. All their school friends are talking about, you know, I'm going to backpack around Africa or something, and he doesn't have that choice. It's very sad. I've heard Prince Charles talk about how awful it is to have your whole life mapped out for you. And I know William's a very sensitive boy, and he'll have absorbed a lot of that and think, oh, I've got the same fate awaits me, sitting around waiting for my parent to die so I can become king.
The ancient courtyards and playing fields of Eton will shape both of Diana's boys for the challenges of a monarchy in a new millennium. William will be Harry's protector.
At Eton, where William is doing very well, William will really look after him and make sure that as a rather frightened newcomer, he'll be well taken care of.
Despite the support of royal friends like Lord and Lady Romsey, members of Prince Charles's inner circle, there are still fears that Diana's death could affect William so greatly that he may not want to be king.
Whether William, given that all he's been through, might say in the next few years, who needs this? The people don't seem to want us anymore. We're going into Europe. What's the monarchy's role? It would be very human, and people would understand if he said, I don't think I want to do this.
Diana instilled in her sons an understanding of the traditions into which they were born. Constant examples of duty and dedication were exemplified by the Queen and the Queen Mother.
The Queen's always played a very important role with William, and Diana told me that William gets on very well with his grandmother, and she was delighted about that. And for the past few years, the Queen has been having tea with William on a Sunday, you know, because he just has to go across the bridge from Eton. So he'll go round to Windsor Castle with his detective, and when he walks in the room, her face lights up, and they sit down and they chat about this and that. And she tells him what she's been doing and who she's met. And he tells her, now this is a tradition that the monarch passes down, you know, through the generations, her wisdom. And there was a time when the Queen hardly saw William, so she's delighted to have formed this bond with him.
William's confirmation service in March 1997 was the last time that the 4 members of the Wales family were all seen together. Diana and Charles had agreed to act in harmony for the sake of their children, who had suffered from their parents' all-too-public divorce. By this time, Diana had resolved to leave behind the bitterness of the past and had forged a new friendship with her former husband. With her generous divorce settlement, Diana was seeking a new independent life. She felt relaxed enough to kiss Charles goodbye at William's speech day in May 1997. They would never be seen together in public again. South of France, summer 1997. Mohammed Al Fayed, owner of Harrods in London and the Ritz Hotel in Paris, invited Diana and her boys to holiday at his magnificent mansion. Here, she fell in love with Fayed's handsome son, Dodi.
Diana would have never married Dodi without the consentment of the 2 children, and Prince William more than that, because she always said that Prince William was her anchor, and she admired the boy enormously.
Diana felt free of the emotional chains of her failed marriage. On a sun-drenched sea with Dodi, her devoted companion, a bright new future beckoned. They cruised the Mediterranean aboard the Fayed's luxurious yacht, the Jonical. William and Harry witnessed their mother's growing romance.
But the children, don't forget, she took them on the boat, and they had a wonderful time. Not probably William. William was not so happy, but the little one was thrilled, all the games, all the thing. And it was probably to accustom them to the situation. And when I asked her, are you going to marry him? And what's your children's reaction? She said, Elsa, I rang up William. So it was the answer. And he said, Mommy, I want you to be happy.
It's been reported that when the first pictures of Diana and Dodi in that sizzling embrace in the Mediterranean were appearing in the press, Diana rang William and warned him, tipped him off that the pictures are about to appear. And his reaction was fine. He just said, look, Mum, whatever makes you happy. He was called a mum. And, you know, he was fine about it. He knew Dodi. He'd met him on the holiday they all shared in the middle of July.
On the last Saturday of August, Diana and Dodi had dinner together at the Paris Ritz. Shortly after midnight, they left to return to Dodi's apartment, where he had a diamond ring awaiting his princess. Pursued by paparazzi and driven too fast, they crashed in an underpass. Diana was 36 years old, her work half done and her sons half raised. In the new life she was embracing, she had exorcised her previous one and dismissed its wiser safety precautions.
Had she been with the boys, of course, she would have been completely differently protected. She would have had a royal protection driver, very well trained by police methods. She would have had probably a follow-up car, making sure that the paparazzi were at a distance. But of course, one part of her deliberately didn't want that, and she did very much feel liberated from many of those constraints in her private life when she gave up being Her Royal Highness and having the trappings of royalty. So, as on many things, she herself was ambivalent. There were moments, obviously, when it would have been very helpful to have proper police protection, but there were other moments when she really wanted to escape, and I suspect that the second one, when she wanted to escape, were more important than the first.
Prince Charles went to Paris to collect the body of his former wife. Despite her divorce and the loss of the title Her Royal Highness, Diana's coffin was draped with the royal standard flag. She had died a member of the royal family. Charles, along with Diana's sisters, took her home to a country in shock and grief. In the next week, the royal family were forced to change their behavior as the scale of public mourning overwhelmed them. Charles rose to the occasion, behaving more like a widower than a former husband. Diana had often said, "I will always be the mother of your children." Even in death, she was still bound to him. Hillary Clinton joined the famous and the unknown at Diana's funeral. She grieved for a young woman she had known and greatly admired.
On behalf of the President and the American people, I came here to express our deep sadness at the loss of Princess Diana. We grieve for her children, her family, and her country. She inspired countless men and women throughout the world with her courage, perseverance, and loving kindness. She did hard work in difficult places, and she softened hearts and lifted spirits. We can honor Diana's memory by continuing her work, by bringing care and comfort to the afflicted, by reaching out to those who are stranded on the outskirts of hope and opportunity, by campaigning against landmines, by treating every child with love and compassion. Today, the shadows are longer because we have lost a light that shined brightly and gently, and we will miss her.
Every nation, colour and creed on earth mourned Diana. In cities throughout the world, commemorative services were held. The soaring notes of opera singer Denise Graves in New York's Central Park carried the sorrow of the American people. Newspapers and magazines all over America reflected the somber mood. Scenes like these were witnessed throughout the country as people said farewell to the world's most popular and celebrated woman. There was a sense of sharing in a tragic and historic event. And in Washington, the National Cathedral congregation prayed with the Reverend Nathan Baxter.
It is too easy and too safe to place her on a pious pedestal where we can admire her and fantasize about her, but not...
Katharine Graham, one of America's most successful women, praised Diana.
She was a star from the beginning. She brought something to royal behavior, touching people and speaking frankly, two major contributions. But we all soon learned that the fairy tale had an unhappy ending. The death of Princess Diana, with Mr. Fayed and Mr. Paul, has brought the problems of celebrity culture and its coverage by all of us into sharp relief. We all need to think hard about how to solve them. This tragedy need not and should not have happened.
In 16 short years, Lady Diana Spencer had risen from unknown aristocrat to the most famous face on earth, from a kindergarten assistant to the Princess of Wales and uncrowned Queen of Hearts. Before her wedding in 1981, Diana spoke of her work as a part-time nanny.
I only worked 3 days a week at kindergarten, and the other 2 I looked after an American baby boy, who was very special to me.
The boy's mother, Mary Robertson, wrote a book about Diana. She praised the happy, normal teenager who took loving care of her son Patrick. In Washington, Mary paid a tribute to her.
Attending Diana's funeral last week was the saddest thing I've ever done. As the last hymn ended, and I heard only the tread of the soldiers' boots, so chilling and so final, as they carried her through the Abbey, my only thought was of the 2 boys who had lost the mother who adored them. God willing, Diana's spirit will live on in her sons.
In Paris, the site of Diana's fatal crash became a place of pilgrimage. A convoy of London taxicab drivers took a party of sick and handicapped children to pay their respects to the princess who had made them feel valued. Diana had raised the profile of handicapped people everywhere. They remembered her as a friend. Shortly before her own death, Diana comforted Elton John at the funeral of murdered fashion designer Gianni Versace. A few weeks later, Elton would sing at Diana's funeral. Other artists compiled a musical tribute. They were inspired by Elton's best-selling record of the song Goodbye England's Rose, which raised millions for the Diana Princess of Wales Memorial Fund. Paul McCartney, Cliff Richard, Michael Jackson, and many more donated their songs to raise money for Diana's charities. Diana's final campaign was aimed at governments who spent fortunes on landmines which injured and killed innocent victims. She visited Angola in January 1997 and was interested in every aspect of the problem.
Within the treatment, do you cope with the psychological side of it as well?
On behalf of the Red Cross, Diana pledged her support for the campaign.
It's an enormous privilege for me to be invited here to Angola in order to assist the Red Cross in its campaign to ban once and for all anti-personal landmines. There couldn't be a more appropriate place to begin this campaign than Angola, because this nation has the highest number of amputees per population than anywhere in the world. By visiting Angola, we shall gain an understanding of the plight of the victims of landmines and how survivors are helped to recover from their injuries. We'll also be able to observe the wider implications of these devastating weapons on the life of this country as a whole. It is my sincere hope that by working together in the next few days, we shall focus world attention on this vital, but until now largely neglected issue.
Her experiences in Angola turned a campaign into a crusade.
I've had hands-on experiences before, but this working trip has been slightly different. I've had more contact with people, and there's been less formalities. It's the type of program I've been looking for some time, and I'm very happy to have done and achieved what we have.
Remember that there were very large campaigns, particularly out of Washington and in Switzerland, with various organisations. What she did is give a lead to all of them, and they all then fell in line behind Diana. With her involvement and with her pictures that were portrayed on the TV and in newspapers across the world, everyone then joined the campaign to have them banned.
In 1993, Diana visited Nepal, a desolate region far from the royal court, but one with its own ceremonies to welcome a princess. Baroness Chalker, a British government minister, accompanied her, but Diana's official public role was being scaled down. Always respectful of other cultures and a perfect ambassador for her country, Diana would nevertheless be cast aside by the royal family, in her own words, as a non-starter for Queen. One of Diana's greatest achievements was losing the stigma attached to two major diseases of mankind, AIDS and leprosy. The Leprosy Mission was one of her most important charities. She had first seen leprosy in Indonesia in 1989. Now she was attracting the attention of the world's media to a centuries-old affliction in another forgotten area. She wanted to make people aware of the plight of the 32 million people directly or indirectly affected by leprosy. Leprosy and AIDS, twin symbols of fear and ignorance, one ancient, one modern, became personal crusades for Diana. In dealing with AIDS and HIV, Diana knew that no amount of words compared with the power of touch. In one handshake, she dispelled the myth that touching transfers the virus.
Publicity about HIV seems to veer between sex and death horror stories at one extreme to complacency at the other. But behind this confused picture lies the reality of a growing worldwide affliction and untold private suffering. HIV does not make people dangerous to know, so you can shake their hands and give them a hug. Heaven knows they need it.
Among the 100 or so charities Diana was associated with was the Chicken Shed Theatre Group, which welcomed children of all abilities. The group missed her warm support. She was as irreplaceable to them as to many other organisations, causes and charities that she had helped through her celebrity status. The Chicken Shed Theatre released a special song at Christmas 1997 for Diana's Memorial Fund. The song, I Am in Love with the World, competed with the best of the pop world for a place in the chart. It was an immediate hit. The Chicken Shed Theatre promoted the song with a video showing Diana surrounded by the children she had lovingly supported. In June 1998, the Chicken Shed children performed their song at an outdoor memorial concert held by Diana's brother Earl Spencer at Althorp, her family estate. The concert raised money for her memorial fund to help her charities.
Many have missed out. We don't yet know which charities are going to benefit because they've only just started distributing the money. I mean, if the money continues to come in, as it may well do, then the charities, hopefully, in the future, will get the sort of money they'd have expected to with Diana alive. But at the moment, there were a number of charities struggling because that money hasn't come through.
Diana was a mother to be proud of. To her boys, she gave her unquestioning love and attention, whatever the problems in her personal life or the demands of her public role. Diana may have told her boys that Leah Rabin, widow of the assassinated Israeli Prime Minister, once said to her, "You and I are the two most tragic figures in the world, except that you have a future and I only have a past." Now Diana has no future. William and Harry are her living legacy. The two brothers, as her only children, have an unbreakable bond, yet they have very different characters.
But she always said Prince Harry is like a Spencer, and I don't have worries about him. But I think that the future king, Prince William, has the sense and sensibility of Diana.
Shortly after Diana's death, Charles took Prince Harry to South Africa. In Johannesburg, they attended a concert of the chart-topping Spice Girls. Harry relished the attention they gave him. It was a time to smile again and to let his father join in the fun. Just 13, Harry looked lost in unfamiliar surroundings. In South Africa, he must have missed the reassuring presence of William studying for his exams at school. But he seemed happy to watch his father show him the way to behave when dealing with unusual customs. And to give him a few stories for his friends back home. Although Harry seems unaffected by the situation, there are moments when the mask slips.
He's become far more reflective. There are long periods, I understand, where he is very sort of contemplative in a way that he wasn't before. Well, he's only a young boy. I think all of us who have families and maybe have lost someone close can understand what may be going through his mind, thoughts, disappointments. He must have periods of unhappiness, but he is quieter and more contemplative than he was before she died.
South Africa was a long way from Britain in culture and climate. But it had many fascinating sights and sounds for father and son to share. It was a rewarding experience and an opportunity for Charles and Harry to relax in a different atmosphere. The tour helped Harry to create a geographical and an emotional distance from the traumatic events after his mother's death. Like William, Harry can never forget the good times they had with Diana. She introduced them to new people, exciting places and fresh adventures. A visit to a Welsh rugby match and a chance to drive an army tank in Germany were part of Harry's upbringing. Diana never wanted second born to mean second best.
In a conversation I had with the princess not long before she died in Kensington Palace, she did bring up the question of her concerns for Harry and that William would always be the one, the centre stage one who was going to be king. She was worried, for instance, rather touchingly, I thought, that William would get all the girls. All the girls would go for wills and poor Harry, who's only a couple of years younger, would be left out. And so she was already kind of taking steps to try and make sure that they were treated equally, even though in royal standing terms, William would always be number one.
Although she would have loved a daughter, Diana threw herself enthusiastically into the role of mother of two lively boys. She gave them the thrills and spills that other children enjoyed. This was nothing like Charles's upbringing. They raced each other in Colorado in July 1995 and shot down the slides at Thorpe Park another year. Distant summers of their past with their memories of a gentle and affectionate mother will always be in their hearts, but those happy days can never return. Flowers were left outside Highgrove, the country home Diana shared with Charles until the time when they separated. In Tetbury, the village nearest Highgrove, local people mourned the princess they had known since she was a young bride. The sudden and brutal end of such a vibrant and beautiful woman stunned the world into unprecedented grief. With unbelievable bravery, Diana's sons joined Prince Charles, Prince Philip and Earl Spencer in the sad procession to her funeral. Later, Earl Spencer said, "It was the most traumatic day of my life." Unknown to the watching world, Diana's will had given the Spencers the moral authority to help guide William and Harry to maturity. At her funeral, Earl Spencer used his position as head of Diana's family to challenge the royal family's ability to raise their heirs according to Diana's wishes. Outside Westminster Abbey, a family united only in grief saw Diana's last journey begin. The outpouring of public grief for Diana forced the royal family to face changes. Earl Spencer's surprising attack on the House of Windsor won public support, and Diana's ancestral home became a shrine to the lost princess. Althorp House, with its fabled art collection, had been her heritage, a potent symbol of dynastic grandeur. Diana was like her grandmother, Cynthia Spencer. Diana and her brother Charles had been very close in childhood. She had mothered him when their parents separated. She was 6, he was 3. In July 1981, their father, the 8th Earl, had proudly given away his youngest daughter in marriage. A sick man, he was happy to see that day. Diana's father was a great prop in her troubled life. He died in 1992, just as the truth about her unhappy marriage was to be made public. Diana knew then that her secrets would soon be out through her cooperation with a book that would betray the royal world. A longtime courtier, her father would have been torn by divided loyalties.
The death of her father was monumental for her. He was a big anchor for her. And he died at the wrong time for her, unfortunately, because it was the time she would have needed him more. Her relationship with her sisters was good. With her brother, she had an on and off relationship.
Shattered by her death and angry at the press he blamed for hounding her, Earl Spencer spoke at his South African home shortly after receiving the terrible news.
Might be a good idea. Good morning. I'm just going to read this statement. All those who've come into contact with Diana, particularly over the past 17 years, will share my family's grief. She was unique. She understood the most precious needs of human beings, particularly those that suffered. And her vibrancy and sparkle, combined with a very real sense of duty, are now gone forever. It is heartbreaking to lose such a human being, especially when she was only 36. Above all, my thoughts are with William and Harry, and with my mother and 2 sisters, who are showing tremendous bravery in the face of senseless tragedy. I would ask you please, at this time, to respect the fact that Diana was part of a family, and amongst the general mourning at her death, realise that we too need space to pay our final respects to our own flesh and blood. For that, we will need privacy. Finally, the one consolation is that Diana is now in a place where no human being can ever touch her again. I pray that she rests in peace.
At first, Earl Spencer wanted to bury Diana with her father and the Spencer ancestors in the little church at Great Brington near Althorp. Within its ornate tombs lies a dynasty that provided soldiers, admirals, Lord Chamberlains, knights, ambassadors and equerries for sovereign and state. The ambitious Lady Fermoy had seen her daughter Frances, Diana's mother, marry into this noble house and produce the next Spencer generation. Diana's sister Sarah had once been courted by Prince Charles but married into the landed gentry. Her other sister Jane married the Queen's private secretary. Diana's royal marriage was the Spencer family's brief shining moment.
The sparkle in those unforgettable eyes, your boundless energy.
Earl Spencer's remarks about the stripping of Diana's title, Her Royal Highness, and his promise that the Blood family would protect her sons sent shockwaves through the royal family.
Bearing in mind what Earl Spencer said at the Abbey in that very contentious and rather bitter speech about the Blood family looking over the upbringing of the boys, one would have expected them to see more of William and Harry. They don't, and one of the reasons, undoubtedly, is that what Earl Spencer said upset Prince Charles because it called into question his abilities as a father.
As head of the Spencer family, the angry young Earl lashed out at the royal family for their treatment of his sister. They had embraced her as a young and naive bride, but then cast her aside after bearing heirs to the throne.
She came from a very, very important and aristocratic family herself. I mean, a family with roots probably further back in the history of this country than the Queen's roots. So that I'm not surprised in a way that they responded in this way. Whether or not what Earl Spencer said at the funeral has lasting impact, I'm not sure.
For 77 miles, Diana's flower-strewn hearse was revered along its final journey. It was a triumphal parade worthy of a medieval heroine. She went home to her grieving family and her ancestral estate. To preserve the privacy of her children, she was buried away from the public gaze on an island in a lake. Her brothers scattered her grave with flowers that will reseed and grow again. On Mother's Day, her son sent flowers to her tranquil resting place. Diana's caring legacy was continued by the memorial fund set up after her death. A major charity event was held for the fund in the famous Beverly Wilshire Hotel in Los Angeles. There was an air of anticipation before the Princess Ball, as many came to see the star guest, the man Diana had called my rock. Her former butler, Paul Burrell, emerged as the keeper of the princess's flame. With his attractive wife, who also worked for Diana, Burrell came to salute the memory of the woman he called the boss. He was so close to Diana that he attended her burial with her family. He wanted her good work to continue.
This is America's first tribute to Diana, Princess of Wales.
An auction raised money for her causes. A box that Diana had given to Paul Burrell was sold and then returned to its owner, and the Coeur de la Mer, a replica of the necklace worn in the film Titanic, raised over $2 million. As her brother had said at her funeral, Diana needed no royal title to generate her particular brand of magic. For Diana's boys, the spring of 1998 was a time for growth and renewal. William went reluctantly with Charles and Harry to Canada. He was embarrassed by his rock star reception. Harry had grown accustomed to cheering crowds. This first appearance of the Wales trio abroad showed that they had found light after the awful darkness of Diana's untimely death. It was a time for jokes and laughter, and a time for relaxation as the three princes skied the Canadian Rocky Mountains. Like Diana, Charles had always enjoyed skiing holidays with his sons, even when they fell down. Charles and his sons were the latest family firm. William once hated photo calls. Now he bantered with reporters.
Harry is the best skier, is that true?
I don't know about that. We might have a family argument.
This was Charles's chance to show his easygoing relationship with his sons and prove that he didn't need Earl Spencer's advice. It was also an opportunity for journalists to compare Harry to William.
He's got exactly his mother's personality. He's very exuberant, very lively, fun-loving. Nothing phases Harry. But William is exactly like his father, very reserved, very thoughtful, conscientious. You know, he even sounds like his father now that his voice is broken. You'd swear you're listening to Charles. So, you know, he looks like his mother, but he's his father's son.
At Balmoral in August 1997, just days before their mother's death, the difference between the two boys' personalities was quite evident. Harry was the more impulsive. William, already a cautious boy, knows that he is destined to be king. One day he will have to choose a future queen, and she will inevitably be compared to Diana.
William's got a tough act to follow. I know he likes blondes. He's always had a yen for blondes, just like his father. So, you know, it's going to be tough, isn't it? I mean, most boys like to get a girl just like their mother was. But for William, is there another girl out there who's, you know, maybe 12 or 13, 14 today, who's going to grow into somebody who's not only as beautiful as Diana, but as compassionate, as warm, have that magic with ordinary people?
After Diana's tragedy, can her boys hope for happiness?
Let's just hope for both their sakes that those boys are given the freedom to make marriages that really work, find girls that they really care about, who really care about them, who are prepared to put up with all the inconveniences of being royal, as well as the considerable perks and home comforts of being royal, but above all that these marriages don't end in divorce, like their parents, like so many royal marriages recently, because of the strains and because of the people in the House of Windsor being so cold to the people that marry into it. I think Diana's left enough with those boys for that not to be true of them. For William, whatever happens to the monarchy, life is always going to be like it is for his mother. Hounded, harassed, pursued, privately as well as publicly. His misfortune as well as his good fortune being that he looks rather like her, and he's her legacy made flesh.
As they watch Diana's sons grow up, the royal family may reflect on what might have been had they kept Diana within their fold. Diana, the uncrowned queen, will always haunt the family that rejected her.